Good afternoon. We are broadcasting the fourth Epictetus Brazilian seminar, and I call Dr. Kelly Rudolph to introduce the conferences.
Wonderful, thank you. Oh, we've got some feedback. Better? Oh, yeah, okay. Great, thank you, Aldo, very much. It's great to be here. And it's a wonderful pleasure to, hold on, we'll see in just a second. Okay. Nope, still a problem. It's the computer, I think.
Yeah, can you turn it down your volume? Oh, yeah. Eu tiro o volume aqui.
Now? Better. Thank you. Great. So thank you, Aldo, very much for welcoming us here. Thank you very much for hosting us. It's wonderful to be here among such a rich and international group of scholars, both here in the room and online. And since we are running a little bit late, I'm going to get straight to the point and welcome my dear friend Sofia Lombardi, Sofia Lombardi, who holds a bachelor's degree in classics and a master's degree in philology, literature, and ancient history from the Università Statale di Milano, and a master's in philosophy from the Collegio San Carlo de Modena, as well as a PhD in philosophy from the Pontificia Universidad Catolica de Chile. Her area of interest is ancient philosophy, and especially, of course, Hellenistic philosophy, and her specific focus is on Posidonius and the Stoics. Sofia is now assistant professor at the Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile. Sofia, it's wonderful to have you here. Over to you.
Okay. Okay, see, can you hear me? Okay, perfect. So thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. This is my first time in Brazil, so I'm really, really happy. And so thank you, Aldo and Kelly, for thinking about me and give me the opportunity to present something that I'm writing about Posidonius. I'm writing a monograph about psychology, Posidonian psychology. And what I'm going to present today is one part of the last chapter I'm writing, re-elaborating my PhD thesis. And in particular, I would like to talk about a part of the Placitis, the PHP, the Placitis Hippocrates et Platonis, where Galen presents an extended quote of Posidonius, offering a critical engagement with Chrysippus' theory that passion arises not from the mere opinion of something as good, but from the opinion that such a good is the highest good. This passage, it is pretty long, from 264 to 270 of the fourth book of the De Placidis, is a key text, I think, for reconstructing Posidonius' psychology in relation to the theory of pathos and his position with respect to Chrysippus and Plato. And I think it's a key passage for several reasons. First, if Galen is to be trusted, this text appears as a quotation of Posidonius in Oratio Recta. Of course, it's impossible to determine with precision what Galen reports verbatim, what he omits, what he summarizes. Nevertheless, it is clear that we are reading text of Posidonius. Second, Galen presents the text as a critique by Posidonius of the Chrysippean theory of the magnitude of goods as the cause of passions. However, this text also takes into account and elaborates other issues connected with passion in general. So this text offers a summary of the crucial points at stake in many of the problems that follow from a monistic reading of the soul. And I think that in this text, we can identify 8 aporiae, or 8 ethical and epistemic problems, concern the sophos is the first problem, prokope is the second problem, and I'm going to talk about this second problem. The asthenia, that is the weakness of the soul, the degrees of passion, individual variability in emotional response, temporal effects on passion, the role of memory, and the influence of past passions on present decisions. Posidonius introduces them with a purpose different from that of Galen, who, adopting the Platonic tripartite model, would have simply resolved the aporiae by attributing irrational phenomena to irrational powers, that is, by explaining them as the outcome of the rational faculties prevailing in their struggle against the rational one. Posidonius examines each problem in detail, but I think in the framework of Stoic monism, while remaining critical of Chrysippus regarding the cause of passion. Because in the fourth book of the PHP, Posidonius, responds differently to the question of what constitutes the cause of passion. Posidonius is not satisfied with the tripartition of Chrysippus' cause that we can reconstruct, because it's really difficult to reconstruct causality in Stoicism. But according to Chrysippus, more or less, in psychological field, we have 3 causes: the synectic cause, that is the asthenia of the soul; the preliminary external cause, that is the phantaston; and the antecedent internal cause, that is the fantasia. And Galen says that Posidonius is not satisfied with this kind of tripartition, and moreover, is not satisfied with the preliminary cause. So what I'm trying to reconstruct now in this monography that I'm writing is to present these 8 aporiae, but now, because of time, I will present only one of them, that is the prokope. a problem that I think Posidonius, where I think Posidonius has a really important role. So I'm going to talk about the concept of moral progress, and also the problems that Procope arise in the Orthodox Stoic system, and how, according to this attempted reconstruction, Posidonius enters the discussion, modifying them with the introduction of the Procopton. So I would like to start with the first text that you have in your handout. It is the first part of this long quote, this long quotation. And here you can read the first problem identified by Posidonius, that is the problem concerning the sophos. And here Posidonius asks why the wise person who tends toward and desires the greatest goods is not, in this case, moved by passions like everyone else. Because here Posidonius is criticizing the idea that, according to Chrysippus, passion arises not from the mere opinion of something is good, but from the opinion that such a good is the supreme good. Closely connected to this section is the theme of the Procopton, that is the second part of the text number 1, that is the one who makes progress. Was disposition and attitude undergo change in relation to affective states as moral advancement takes place? This, of course, raises the broader Stoic problem of Procope. Here, Posidonius is precisely asking how Procope can be understood within a psychological model that seems not to allow for intermediate cognitive states between the wise, the sophos, who invariably act correctly, and the faulos, who invariably err. Just as the wise person, when confronted with great apparent goods, also the Procopton is not moved in a passionate way, say Posidonius, so too those who are making progress, although they believe that great evils are still present due to their own vicious condition, nonetheless do not experience fear or pain. This passage appears as a continuation of the preceding section devoted to the wise person. The problem remains the same, but it now applies to those who are progressing. Posidonius, unfortunately, does not dwell on this topic. He merely mentions it, but even in these few lines, he emphasizes an interesting condition of those who make progress, a condition that seems to be in tension with Orthodox Stoic doctrine. For this reason, now I want to show how was considered moral progress in Zeno and Chrysippus, and then try to reconstruct Posidonius' idea about it, looking for other texts in the PHP, book 4 and 5. Already in Zeno, the cognitive and dispositional states were only two, that of the wise, knowledge, and of the fool, ignorance, agnoia, and the transition from one to the other was considered immediate without any intermediate stages. As Plutarch writes, moral progress within Stoicism was considered an enigma, since the Stoics presented the person who has not yet freed himself from passions and infirmities as being on the same level as the one who has not yet freed himself from the worst vices. Plutarch's criticism of the Stoic doctrine of nil medium inter virtutem et vitium rests on 2 points. First, Posidonius wishes to underline the absurdity of thinking that if virtue has not yet been fully attained, one necessarily remains in vice. Second, he argues that it is impossible that there be no awareness of moral progress, since according to the Stoics, the transition from one state to the other will be perceptible only from the result. So the person who makes progress will be not conscious of his change and will not realize his improvement until the final outcome. Plutarch thus presents one of the Stoic paradoxes underlying this enigma, namely that all errors or wrong action, amartemata, are equal. Therefore, it makes no difference whether this is an example from Cicero, De Finibus. It makes no difference whether a helmsman sings a ship full of straw or a ship full of gold, or whether someone strikes a parent or a slave. Cicero comments that the nature of the cargo of the ship has nothing to do with the skills of the navigator. That is, whether he carries gold or straw, there is no difference as far as his competence or incompetence is concerned. But if we go to the text number 2, that is Stobeo Eclogi, Stobeo clarifies that the errors are equal, isa, but not the same, uketidomoia. Wrong acts all arise from vice, and the corresponding krisis, the judgment, is the same in every case of wrongdoing. However, with respect to the external stimulus, wrong acts differ in quality, since the intermediates vary according to the particular judgments that are formed. There is no such a thing as an error that is more error than another, according to Stoics, or, for example, a lie that is more false than another. There is a qualitative difference in the nature of the error or lie and in the circumstances under which it occurs. For example, if there are two mistakes, sinking a ship full of gold or one full of straw, they differ qualitatively but not in degree, since in both cases the ship is lost due to the same cause, that is the helmsman's incompetence. So the difference lies in the qualitative aspect of the error, which depends on the changing external stimulus that gives rise to judgment under different circumstances. Another example that can clarify more this point is from Diogenes Laertius, book 7, 120. This is the famous example of Canopus. If one person is 100 stadia from the city of Canopus and another only 1 stadion away, both are equally outside the city. Likewise, both the person who commits a great error and the one who commits a small one are equally in error. In this case, the distance, that is the quantitative aspect, does not matter, since both are outside the city. But there is a qualitative difference depending on their position relative to it. Yet this qualitative difference does not alter their condition, since neither has reached the city of Canopus. If, then, there is no middle ground between virtue and vice, as opposed to the peripatetic view, there can exist only 2 opposing cognitive states: the wise person, who possesses virtue, and the fool, who possesses vice. Using one of another Cicero example, always from the De Finibus, just as neither the person completely submerged in water nor the one just beneath the surface can breathe, so too the one who has made some progress toward virtue is in the same condition as the one who has made none. The idea is that although someone may be progressing, until he attains virtue and becomes wise, he remains in ignorance and error, like any fool who makes no effort toward moral improvement. And this theory perfectly fits the Stoic radical dichotomy between Sophos and Faulus. No, the battery. The battery is not okay. So this does not mean that the Stoics deny the very notion of moral progress. Okay, so this does not mean that the Stoics deny the very notion of moral progress. Indeed, progope is among the preferred indifference. And moreover, in the passage number 3 of the handout from Stobeus Florilegium, Chrysippus explicitly refers to the prokopton and explains that even if such a person has reached the highest point of progress, epakron, and performs all the kathekonta without omission, his life is still not happy, since happiness arises only when this intermediate action, mesai praxis, acquire firmness, stability, and consistency. In other words, being on the verge of wisdom does not yet make one wise. From this passage, one can deduce first that for the Stoics, prokope indeed exists, and second, that the prokopton passes through distinct stages, since he can be said to have reached the highest point. The idea that Stoic moral progress does not exist derives not from the Stoics themselves, but from their opponents, like Plutarch, for example. The Stoics clearly recognize the possibility of a transformation from foolishness to wisdom through what they call metabole. What distinguishes their conception is that prokope does not correspond to the ordinary notion of gradual progress through intermediate stages, in which the subject acquires a new status, the status of the prokopton, who errs less and becomes aware of his improvement. For the Stoics, progress is indeed possible and occurs in different phases, but the change from fool to wise person happens at a single moment. What does not exist is an intermediate state between the fool and the sage, and the radical dichotomy between what is perfectly good and what is completely bad remains valid all the time. This is a sudden transition from one state to another that provides further grounds for criticism. At the first of these critics is Plutarch. Plutarch trivialized the issue and remarks that if the change is so abrupt and profound, one could be utterly wicked in the morning and perfectly virtuous by evening. Or Plutarch say you can go to sleep as a fool and wake up as a sage. But the fact that the change occurs suddenly does not mean it is unprepared or random, according to Stoics. The radical change of metabole thus coincides with the gradual change of prokope. Okay, now I think we can return to the text of the De Placidis. This was the text number 1. And we can see that what Posidonius is saying is that those who make progress, tus prokoptontas, although still subject to great evils because vice is still present in them, should necessarily experience passions such as fear or pain. But this does not occur. As has just been shown, according to Stoics such as Chrysippus, if someone is not a wise person, he is necessarily a fool, even if he is advancing in progress, and therefore, as a fool, he must fall into passions. In the situation described by Posidonius, however, this does not happen, which clearly generates a problem. It thus seems that, in this case, Posidonius is referring to an intermediate status, to someone who is still connected to vice, but no longer succumbs to the passions like a fool. This condition could be seen as a nuanced reformulation of Chrysippus' rigid dichotomy. According to Posidonius, then, the prokopton is no longer merely a fool, but someone who is aware that he is making progress. In fact, how Chrysippus says in the text number 2, he is conscious that something harmful still depends on the vicious condition in which he remains, yet he can refrain from experiencing fear and pain. It thus seems that Posidonius is assigning a new status to the prokopton, different from that assigned by Chrysippus. The condition of the prokopton described by Posidonius fits neither of the Stoic dispositional types, because the one who progresses is no longer a phaulos, as Chrysippus thought, but someone capable of recognizing the existence of evil and of understanding that such evil is the consequence of his own vices. And this awareness signals moral improvement and explains why he does not fall into passions. We have another text of the PHP in the book number 5, and this is the text number 4, where Posidonius mentioned the prokoptontes explicitly and portrays them as those who do not experience pain, who lubuntai, when they think that great evils are present, because they are guided not by what is irrational, but what is rational in the soul, to logikon. Posidonius thus seems to draw a distinction between the person progressing toward virtue and the fool. The former has begun to employ reason correctly, even if not consistently, whereas the latter lacks the right reason that by nature he auto-possesses and therefore falls into the passion, which are product of reason's disobedience to itself. Another passage is the text number 5, the last one, in which reference to the theme of the Procoptontes can be seen when Galen presents the analogy between body and soul formulated by Chrysippus and Posidonius. And this is another really important text of the PHP. The argument begins with the definition of passions. Both the ancients and Chrysippus agree that passion does not arise in the souls of the wise. However, they disagree about the condition of the soul of the foolish person during and prior to the passions. Chrysippus compares the soul of the Phaulus to a body that easily falls into diseases from small or change causes. Posidonius, however, is critical of this comparison, for he likens the soul of the foolish person to a body that, although it can become ill, can also be healthy. According to Posidonius, the difference does not lie, as Chrysippus seems to suggest, in the magnitude of the cause of a disease, but rather in the kind of body in which the disease arises. There are, in fact, bodies that fall ill more easily and others that fall ill with more difficulty. Okay. Okay.
Sorry, we had a technical problem, but we are coming back now.
Okay. So, Chrysippus compares the soul of the Phaulus to a body that easily falls into diseases from small or change causes. And Posidonius is critical of this comparison, for he likens the soul of the foolish person to a body that, although it can become ill, can also be healthy. Okay. According to Posidonius, there are bodies that fall ill more easily and others that fall ill with more difficulty. What matters is the intrinsic condition of the body itself. For this reason, Posidonius disagrees with both of Chrysippus' analogies. In the first case, the Stoic compares the healthy soul of the wise person to a body that is healthy in the sense of being immune to disease, something possible since nobody can be completely free from disease, although the soul can indeed be apathes. In the second case, Chrysippus considers the soul of the foolish person diseased and compares it to a body that easily falls into illnesses. Posidonius agrees with Chrysippus that all foolish people are sick in respect to their soul, but he finds inadequate the way this psychic condition of disease is physically compared. The nosos des psuches, as we can read in the text number 5 of the foolish person, does not resemble the sickly constitution of the body, cachexia, by which one contracts fever, as Chrysippus says, but rather resembles either a bodily health that has a proneness to disease, euemptosia, or the disease itself, nosos. The comparison, therefore, should be made with a body that can be healthy yet still has a tendency to fall ill, or with one that is already sick. Posidonius emphasizes that having a sickly constitution, where there is no possibility of being healthy, is not the same as being healthy with a possibility of falling ill. And this is an important distinction. With this comparison, Posidonius intends to indicate that even the foolish person could possess a healthy soul, and in this case would qualify as a prokopton. This is precisely what Chrysippus denies, since his starting point is the two opposing psychological characters: the wise person with a soul that is always healthy, and the foolish person with a soul that is always sickly. According to Chrysippus, the soul of the Phaulus can never be healthy. In contrast, it can be merely not diseased, which does not mean it has been healed of its illnesses, but rather disease that its normal state is a sickly constitution. The only one to whom Chrysippus can attribute the concept of a healthy soul is the wise person. The point is that, according to Posidonius, the two conditions, the illness itself or health with a proneness to fall ill, euemptosia, cannot occur at the same time, since they are two distinct and mutually exclusive states in which the foolish person can find himself. The foolish person may be diseased, but if they do not succumb to passion, they may be healthy. It is in this distinction that a reference to the one who progresses can be glimpsed, distinguishing the proper Phaulus from the Phaulus who has begun to improve, that is, the prokopton. In this schema, the former has a diseased soul and a diseased body, whereas the latter possesses a healthy soul with a susceptibility to illness and a body that tends toward disease because it is weaker than the body of a wise person, but not as weak as of the proper foolish. Posidonius then adds the case of the wise person with a soul that is always healthy, to whom there cannot correspond a body that is always healthy. Rather, such a person will have a robust and strong constitution, which is different from being immune to disease, that it is impossible. So now, in order to conclude and taking into account all these texts, and especially the source of Galen, far from criticizing Chrysippus or denying the orthodox opposition between the wise and the foolish, what Posidonius is doing is rather nuancing, I think, this opposition by attempting to grant the person who is making progress a specific place and status that had previously remained unclear within the Stoic system. Of course, it's true that the Stoics admitted the existence of moral progress and very probably spoke of an intermediate condition between the sage and the fool. But in this case, it seems that they did not regard the person making progress as possessing a distinct status, but rather as still being a fool. And it is also true that we have no direct sources on the subject, and the problem must be reconstructing from a few indirect and often hostile testimonies. Nevertheless, that can be inferred from the analyzed text is that Posidonius deemed it appropriate to delineate more clearly the role of the prokopton, a question already discussed among the Stoics, in order to make his condition and place within a rigidly dichotomy system more explicit. And in doing so, he would be responding to the criticism, for example, Plutarch, Cicero, of those who had taken the idea of progressive Stoicism to an absurd extreme, and thereby making the doctrine of the school less rigid and more accessible. And he also, I think, influenced the Roman Stoicism, where the idea of moral progress, like Epictetus or Seneca, is present. Thank you.
Great, Sophia, thanks very much. I'm going to move the camera so that it's kind of between us. I'm going to sit closer to you so that we can share the session. Yeah, so I'm going to open it up I'm going to open it up to questions. We'll start here in the room, and if anyone online has a question, please put it in the chat. So, Sofia, over to you. Questions from the room. Eduardo, please.
Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, all right. So, yeah, that's it. So, thank you very much, Sofia, for your paper, your presentation. And it's very good to know that you are actually writing a thesis about Posidonius. But, it's not. I mean, the reception of Posidonius was not so strong. Nowadays, as it was, for instance, up to the 60s, for instance, between 1860 and 1906, many books were written, like in the German world, about Posidonius. There's a whole shelf were written there. So it's good that you are. Yeah. So I mean, I'll go straight to the point. That it sounds clear here that in your first text, 164, I mean, it's your text number 1, it's fragment 164, and that's basically here is the heart of the difference between Posidonius and Chrysippus. And I learned it with Professor Kidd. I'm just producing what he would say here. Right. The basic difference between Posidonius and Chrysippus is that the psychology. Posidonius, I mean, that's what he did. The problem is not what is outside. The moral error, the passion, it's the cause. It's not because there's something really looks extremely nice, and you commit the moral passion and the moral mistake. Yeah? It's because your soul, I mean, body is just a sin. The real point is that, I mean, it's your soul is not strong enough to resist that passion. But this is just, but in these fragments, it's like that's what it's implicit things. I mean, there's a basic difference. That's it. Posidonius' idea of human soul is not money. It's not money. It's like there's at least 50 fragments of cinema or talent. There's at least 3 fragments of saying the story. There was a group whose idea of the soul was not only so it's not only God saying that. It's Seneca says that. So you're not just dismiss what Galen said. You have to dismiss what Seneca said as well. So it was not monist. There was irrational. People were born with a moral habit. That's Chrysippus or Chrysippus. Yeah, you are not Chrysippus. You are Seneca. You are sort of what's his story? No, you are philosopher. So you people commit mistakes, but the rest first we commit mistakes. We've got we were born like that. It was not the external world who made us bad. We were born bad. We were born bad. We've got an animal side of our soul. So that's why it says it's not what's come from outside. It's inside. We are like can't change it. And there's more progress to an utmost state. Like we are progressing like more or less, but there's not a goal. We are going to be like Chrysippus. We all are. Anyway, that's my point. That's my So that's it.
Okay.
Sophia,
So
do you
what-
have anything you'd like to respond to?
I would like to respond that I think that according to Posidonius, the soul is monistic.
Who said that?
This is my answer. Because what I'm trying to reconstruct, maybe I'm wrong, but what I'm trying to do is to try to read Galen without the Platonic interpretation of Galen. That is really difficult, I know, because we have only Galen and
Actually, it's not all Galen. I'm repeating that.
Yeah.
It's not all Galen. Seneca says there is a group of Stoics who psychology was they believe like sort of they believe in a double of the soul. So okay.
okay. Yeah.
I can show you.
Oh. Yes. I can see it, but I think that this is like the easy reading. I think it's like the easy reading of Posidonius and how Posidonius was read by Galen, for example. So I don't think that Posidonius was completely. It was like completely satisfied with the monism of Chrysippus. For this reason, I think it's like intermediate link, Posidonius, between the rigid dichotomy of the first Stoics and the transformation of Stoicism in Roman period. So the idea for me is that Posidonius goes on with the idea that the soul is only one, hegemonikon, but with nuances and with some changes. For example, introducing the idea of the prokopton that the Stoics didn't have, and something like this. But I don't think he refused, as Galen says, and was ashamed, as Galen says, because Galen is a bit strong with the words. It was ashamed of the Chrysippus monism.
Can I ask a question, please? Did Posidonius talk about different functions of the soul? Excuse me. Did Posidonius talk about different functions of the soul?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, this is another problem, because every time Posidonius talks about dunamis or
Yes.
different part, it is never a Posidonius quote. It's always Galen reinterpreting Posidonius' words.
And how do you know it is not a Posidonius quote?
Because Galen is not saying, Posidonius say this, okay? This is the edition of the Lacy, of course. But for example, in this case, you can read in the first line of the text number 1, alla to cautafas conti Posidonius antilegon hode pos fesi. That is, he goes on in this way, and it means that maybe after the pos fesi, we have a oratio recta of Posidonius. There are other parts of the PHP where Galen says, and Posidonius post feci. But every time Galen uses these Platonic words, is always like, I don't know, oratio obliqua of Posidonius, no a direct quotation.
Did you find any source that says that Posidonius is a monist?
No, but I don't find any source where Posidonius say is a Platonist.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Aldo.
Thanks for your conference. I have a question about Epictetus, the possible relation between Epictetus and Posidonius, because Epictetus divides his philosophy into three topics. One person of the judge, second of the views, and the third one concerning logical topics. In order to assegurate the progress made two first ones. There is something similar in both focus.
Of this tripartition, I don't know, because I don't have now in mind, for example, text about logic of Posidonius. And actually, I'm always studying the part of the psychology and ethics, so I'm not sure.
Okay. Anyone else? Kelly, do you have any questions?
Yeah, Sofia, thank you. That was great. I learned a lot, and I just have one basic question, just kind of informational for clarification. When you mentioned, sorry, because I've got to look at my notes. When you mentioned the idea of a non-standard idea of progress, can you tell me a little bit more about what you do see, like what the distinction is, and what a standard notion of progress looks like, and where we see that? Is that a standard Aristotelian notion of progress? Where's the standard coming from? Or in this case with Galen, is it Platonic? So that, just how that compares with the non-standard, and how we then would look for that elsewhere in our Stoic texts.
Okay. Yes, thank you. I think the standard is the peripatetic procope. So, and I think it's also our idea of progress. That is, if you want to make progress, you have to, I don't know, do something better every time and doing less errors. So this is like the standard idea of progress, and also the awareness of progress. So you have to be conscious of your progress. It seems that in Stoic, the first Stoic texts, there are really few, like Stobeo Florilegio. This is, for example, a title of a book, and in Diogenes, that is like a book about the intermediate state. So really few texts. It seems that according to Zeno and Chrysippus, this change is a sudden. It's like suddenly. That is this metabolic. For this reason, Plutarch say you can go to sleep stupid and wake up intelligent. This is the idea. So I think this is the difference between the standard idea of progress and the metabole, the Stoic metabole. This is not the standard idea of progress, but it's still progress according to them.
So can you say a little bit more about that kind of self-recognition of progress on this Posidonian account?
Yes, because maybe
because I know you talked a little bit about this, but I'm wondering if you could just expand a little bit on how that fits in with this idea of a non-standard idea of progress.
Okay. In the text number 1, we have the verb that I think it's important, that is upolambano. And I think this is the verb through which Posidonius says that the procoptontes suppose they are aware that their vice brings them great harm, but they anyway don't fall into passions. So the idea that there's a new status in this situation, the procopton, that is aware of what he's doing, is still in vice, but he or she doesn't assent to a false presentation, because this is the mechanism. And the problem here is, who is this person? Because it's not the Phaulus, and of course it's not the Sophos. So for this reason, I think that here Posidonius is like modifying something of the non-standard idea of progress in Stoicism.
Okay, that's interesting, because one of the thoughts I had about that was, there's that description in Zeno's Republic about the lover, right? That the sage will be the lover of the beautiful young person who has the potential for virtue, right? That they can see that there's something about the physique, the way that the young person in bloom holds their bodies, they can see that there's potential for virtue there. And I wonder if that might help you, if that might give you some more space to kind of play with this intermediate state. It's not an intermediate state, but there's a natural, this idea of a natural capacity, no, not capacity, how did you say it? A natural tendency or a characteristic that is more likely to be virtuous, right? And so maybe that would help.
Okay, yes, thank you. No, I don't know this.
Okay, I can send you the reference, because I think that's another example of, that like it's not any kind of awareness, but it's a kind of a tendency, right? There's a tendency to virtue that the sage is able to detect in a young person.
Yes, and a tendency to virtue is like an idea of Prokopton.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So, and the text says that the sage hunts this young person, right? It's like goes after them.
Okay,
So,
okay.
yeah.
A good point, thank you.
Yeah. Other questions, Aldo?
Just two questions. I find interesting when you say that talk about it sudden change. Do you think it is in some way similar to what Aldo says about conversion? And if yes, which would be the great difference between Chrysippus and Posidonius' kind of conversion, if it's the case, or something we were discussing with Kelly.
Yes, I think the idea is an abrupt or sudden change, but it doesn't mean, as Plutarch says, that there's not a preparation. I think that the example of Canopus is a good example, because Canopus was for the ancient the idea of Egypt. So the idea is that if you are not completely in Canopus, you are not completely safe, because the water, the sea outside Canopus was really tricky. So I think that this metaphor that used Diogenes, that was from Chrysippus, is a good example, because you are sailing to Canopus, so you are preparing to go to the city, but you are not in the city. If you're not in the city, you can have a shipwreck also in the sand, like at the, I don't know, from really next to the city, but not already in the city. So this is the idea, because if you're not completely into virtue, you can fall into vice, even if you're apacron. I think this is the idea. There's a progression, but no, there's a progression, but this kind of progression is not like that you are not a fool. This is the idea.
So maybe we can make a link with what Epictetus and Seneca says about the profession, Socratic profession of ignorance. The need to remember all the time that we are still fools and so on, in order to keep progressing.
Yes, it could be, because at the end, the faulos, the epistemic characteristic of the faulos is agnoia. Agnoia, ignorance, agnoia. So if you're not sophos, you are ignorant. This is the idea.
Be always aware that you are.
Yes. That it could be, as Plutarch say, absurd. It's like an extreme position. So for this reason, I think Posidonius change something in this point, and not only in this point, also in other point about Chrysippus psychology.
Good. Any other questions? No. Oh, Eduardo. No, just very loud. Speak very loud.
You just brought us another evidence, just proving corroborating that there was an ingrained difference between the idea of soul in Chrysippus and this one. Now, can we understand? There is an idea of moral progress. What I mean, there's no sort of optimal state in which you can always improve your state. Because we all would want like sort of defective state. Sort of defective state. So we can always improve it. Somehow improve it. And tomorrow we're going to be a product that you can improve, try to improve, but never reach an optimal state, and the world will be always like that. I mean, you can improve it with your possibilities, but there's no sort of optimal position. Say that instead of trying to improve and show that I complete and another evidence, there is a difference between implicit difference between Posidonius and Chrysippus. Why are you going to go with the evidence and show that there is instead of going against evidence? Why are you going to do that? But what there is a problem, there is a difference. Why don't I mean sort of admit there is a like let's work with this with all these 100 evidence that there is a probability this was going to I just go and agree instead of no, there is it, but that's called an adversative argument. Yeah, they are different here, but they are different there, but they are different everywhere, but why don't you just say, okay, they are different? It's just a general question.
Yeah, no, I think there is a difference between Chrysippus and Posidonius, of course, but it's not a difference about the core of the of Stoicism, that is monism. And I'm not the only one, because I appreciate a lot the work of Fionn Lail of 1984. That is the first Fionn Lail, the French about Seneca de Ira.
She showed that Seneca told that there was a difference that she mentions this.
Yes, but I agree with Fionn. Yeah, it's really good. I agree with her. I agree with John Cooper and his work on pathetic kinesis. I agree, moreover, with Tom Tilleman. So I'm like, I have more.
It's really bad, but no. Unless we can. Yeah, it's true that there's all these people.
Okay. Great. Okay. All right. Wonderful. Thank you, Sofia. I think that it just leaves it for us to thank Sofia for her talk. That was great. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Sofia.
Thank you so much.
Okay, and we're going to move straight on to our next paper, our next speakers. I think I'll just make sure that technical stuff is getting sorted. We're all good? Okay. Did you send me your bio?
Yes.
Okay. Nope. There. Okay. Great. All right. Thank you very much. So it is again a great pleasure to welcome today two PhD students who are here to give a joint paper. The first is to speak today will be Danilo Patutti. Sorry, I'm using the Italian pronunciation, aren't I? Patutti, who has a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy and a Master's in Philosophy of Education, and is currently a PhD candidate in philosophy at the University of Sao Paulo. His current research focuses on the role and function of attentional exercises in the teachings of Epictetus. So Danilo, it's wonderful to have you here. Thanks very much. The second speaker today will, in this paper, they're doing a double act, is André Santana, who is a PhD student in the graduate program in metaphysics at the University of Brasilia. He is a member of the ANPOF, Epictetus Working Group, and his research focuses on Epictetus and the relationships between Stoic philosophy and the Eastern traditions. So André and Danilo, it's wonderful to have you here today. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. It's a great pleasure and an honor to be here with you again, as well as Aldo and everybody. I'm going to talk about the role of attention in Epictetus' teaching. So I believe everybody has the handout with the quotations. I'll try to be fast, so we can have time and not to be so relating to the development of attention. So I'm going to talk about attention in Epictetus. The first thing I would like to emphasize is that Epictetus says that the rational capacity, it's both capable of contemplating itself and guiding itself, because there is a coincidence between its nature and its function. So Epictetus says that the main role of human reason is to use representations correctly. And reason itself is a system constituted by representations of a certain quality. So in this sense, Epictetus says in diatribe 1.20.5 that the logos, it is by nature contemplative of itself. But when he says that, in my view, he's linking an act of attention to the activity of reason. Because to say that the logos contemplates itself means that the logos sees itself, observes itself, and in some way perceives itself. The adjective he uses, theoretikos, as well as the verb theoreo, has an etymological origin that traces back to Indo-European, and it originally means observing. So this lexical indicates an act of visual perception, and by extension, a becoming aware of something, seeing with the mind, perceiving, or being conscious. So the act of contemplating or observing signifies both an act of observation carried out by the eyes and an act of observation carried out with the mind. So when we think about the contemplation of reason as a capacity to observe and to become aware, we are presupposing the activity of paying attention. So Epictetus says that we need to observe the fantasiae, the representations, so we can be able to examine to our representations. And by doing that, we aim the development of an unorthos logos, so we can harmonize our state, the state of our soul with nature. And then I quote Epictetus, text number 2. Now, what then is the material of the philosopher? Is it the cloak? No, but reason. What is his end? Is it to wear a cloak? No, but to possess the reason in the right state. End of quote. So, because we don't have the access to the real world directly, but we feel the world through representations and through our sense that came and that give us this sense data material to the representations. The examination of representation is the central pursuit of the good life. But to correct the use of representations, we need to make the correct use of our capacity for choice. So we realize that the true goods lie in our prohaidesis, in our capacity of choice within us, in the FHMI, but we don't have actually the practical correct use of it. Intellectually, we know, but not practically. So the hegemonicons, the directing part of the human soul, coincides with the logos, but this term, the hegemonicon terms, highlights the role conductor of the soul, right? And it is exactly in the hegemonicon that the representations make their impact. And when we have the Epictetian practice, we are emphasizing the state of the hegemonicon, and is precisely paying attention to this state when we have a possibility to make a correct use of prohaidesis. I'm going to quote text number 3 in the Diatribe. So this is then the beginning of philosophy, a perception of the state of the ruling center, hegemonicon. For when a man knows that it is weak, then he will not employ it on things of the greatest difficulty, end of quote. But furthermore, he says, the material of the good and virtuous person works upon is his own ruling center, as that of a doctor or wrestling master is a human body, and that of a farmer is his land. And the task of the good and virtuous person is to deal with his representations accordance with nature, end of quote. In the next text, he connects the act of paying attention to the condition of our ruling center in Discourses 1.20, paragraph 10-11. He says, in like manner, where we think that to be mistaken, not to be mistaken, make a great difference, there we apply great attention to discovering the things which can deceive. But in the manner of our miserable ruling center, yawning and sleeping, we carelessly admit every representation, for the harm is not immediately noticed. End of quote. So paying attention to the state of the hegemonicon means paying attention to the entire processes of producing and receiving representation. Here we must remember that representations have a dual sensory and linguistic aspect. The pathway through which sensory data accesses the soul coincides with the soul's cognitive functions. The sensory apparatus is a bodily extension of the hegemonicon, and the hegemonicon is the log itself, and the conductor of the human soul. This derives from the Stoic doctrines of pneuma and total mixture, making psychology and biology inseparable, that is, continuous. Although the occurrence of representation is not a function of the hegemonicon, that is, the hegemonicon cannot control the flow of sensory data, and therefore cannot deny the production of representations that arise within it. The hegemonicon can control, to some extent, its attitude toward the reception of sensory data, and consequently, its attitude toward the occurrence of representations. In other words, the hegemonicon can control the quality of its cognitive or linguistic response to sensory data. Therefore, the flow of external things must be considered as something independent of the flow of the soul's movements. Although there is a bodily continuity between the external world and the soul, this is possible if we pay attention to the occurrence of representations as a continuous flow independent of ourselves. That is, ukefhemin. Whenever we attribute our good to something external, we try to grab it, and our inner state ceases to be guided by ourselves and is instead driven by something external. And this is directly dependent, that's my point, on our effort of attention toward ourselves, that is, toward the state of our hegemonicon. Just as a ship pilot during navigation remains vigilant to the movements of the seas and to his own responses, ensuring they are appropriate for the safety of the ship and its destination, so too must we voluntarily mobilize our capacity to pay attention to our hegemonicon, for we navigate an ocean of representations. And from the perspective of nature, the ocean is indifferent to the quality of the pilot's navigation, just as the flow of representations is indifferent to the quality of our rational faculties response. Here, flow of representations is synonymous with the flow of external events. Epictetus, in text number 6, he says, and I quote, "If you remember this, you always maintain your character such as it ought to be. But if you do not, consider that the times of opportunity are perishing. In all that effort of paying attention to yourself, you are going to waste them and overturn them. And it needs only a few things for the loss and overturning of all, just some slight deviation from reason. For the steering of a ship to upset it, he has no need of the same preparation as to keep it safe. But if he turns a little to the wind, it is lost. And if he does not do this purposely, but is merely distracted, it is lost. Such is the case here too. If you not a little, all that you have amassed it up until then is lost and gone. Paying attention to the representations, keep awake. For that which you have to keep watching is no small matter, but its modesty, fidelity, and constance, freedom from passions, a state of mind undisturbed, freedom from fear, tranquility, and outward liberty." End of quote. In this passage, we can see that there is a voluntarily effort to pay attention, right? So the prohairesis, that is our capacity for choice, is free and autonomous as our rational capacity. Although they are free by nature, we must learn how to use them, and above all, learn to control them. FHMing, that is directly under our charge of capacity for choice, are the psychic functions of assent, judgment, impulse, and desire. These psychic functions are modulated by the flow of sensations and linguistic responses of the hegemonicon, but it is the capacity to pay attention to the processing of this informational data that directs the use of prohairesis. The prohairesis, that is the assent, judgment, impulse, and desire, operate independently of whether they are actively controlled by the soul or not. To take control over them, it is necessary to have an active, ready attitude, and above all, to pay attention to the use of prohairesis. So Epictetus says in the diatribe Peripris of 4.12, paragraph 7, I quote, "So to what things should I pay attention then? In the first place, to those general principles that you should always have at hand, so as not to go to sleep or get up or drink or eat or converse with others without them, namely, that no one is master of another person's choice, and that is in choice alone that our good and evil lie. No one has the power then either to procure any good for me or to involve me in any evil, but I alone have authority over myself in this matter." End of quote. So to exercise authority over ourselves, it is necessary to pay attention to the instant when the representation strikes the soul, because the interpretative reaction of the hegemonicon is practically instantaneous. Immediately, the hegemonicon assigns a meaning to the representation and gives a positive or negative assent. The effort of paying attention to the moment of the representation's incidence allows us to suspend assent. That is, it makes it possible to call a halt and restrain the soul's natural tendency to assent. So the effort of attention to the present moment intervenes between the representation and the assent, restrains the soul's natural tendency to assent, and prevents us from being swept away and overcome by the persuasiveness of the representation. Epictetus states in Discourse 3.3, paragraph 2, that our soul naturally inclines toward the true, naturally recalls from the false, and naturally holds back facing the indifference. He says in Greek that the soul naturally epineuing toward the true and ananeuing toward the false. Both of these words are formed from the verb neuo, which means to incline in any direction. In this context, it seems to us that the most appropriate translation for these verbs would be to incline toward, for epineuing, and that is, the soul naturally inclines towards the true, and to incline backward, for ananeuing. That is, the soul naturally inclines away from the false, or alternatively, the soul naturally recalls from the false. This translation highlights the notion of movements in the soul's activities that are naturally proper to them. In this text, by translating the verb epeko in a literal manner, namely, as to hold upon or to hold back, and not simply as to suspend assent, we can better specify the type of effort of the soul in the face of the persuasiveness of the representation. Epictetus says, I quote, in the text number 8. Now, since it lies in the nature of every soul to incline forward to what is true, and to incline backwards from what is false, and to hold upon to what is unclear, it lies in its nature likewise to be moved by desire towards what is good, and by aversion from what is bad, and to remain before what is neither good nor bad. Immediately the good appears, it moves the soul towards itself, while the bad moves the soul from itself. End of quote. In this way, we emphasize the dynamic character of the human soul and indicate what must be done in the face of something that is nature, that is by nature in motion. It is necessary to exert a force, to mobilize the tonus, in order to exercise voluntarily control over the movements of the soul. In this context of philosophical practice, paying attention means tensing the soul, but at the same time, it also means to detach oneself. Epictetus used the verb existemi to express the action of inner withdrawal from external things. And literally, the verb means the action of to become separated. That is, we need to tense the soul, to pay attention to the flow of representations, but at the same time, to release ourselves from the flow of external things. So I quote the Epictetus on the Diatribe 3.22. He's talking about the ideal cynic. So the ideal cynic, he never enters into this context in which he can be defeated, but renounces immediately to what is not true, to what is not truly his own, laying no claim to what is lavish. But when it comes to his capacity of choice and use of representations, there you'll see that he has so many eyes that you could say that Argus was blind by comparison. Then I skip up a part. Is it to these matters that he devotes to all his attention and energy? But when anything else comes into play, he lies back in his north and is wholly at peace. No one can rob him of his power of choice or exert mastery over it. End of quote. So, moving on, in Discourse 1.4, paragraph 5, Epictetus states that the work of arete is euroia. And in Discourses 4.12, paragraph 2, he states that postponing the effort of attention is to postpone euroia. Therefore, postponing the effort of attention is to postpone the work of arete. This is why he affirms that the worst of all habits is that of postponing the exercise of attention, and in second place, the habit of postponing the cultivation of attention. To become accustomed to not paying attention also means becoming accustomed to not examining our representations, and likewise, to not take control of our capacity for choice. In other words, it means to ignore the state of our hegemonicon and leave it under the direct influence of the flow of external things. So Epictetus says, I quote, Diatribe 4:12. When you relax your attention for a short while, your affairs will necessarily proceed far from what in every respect. First, the worst habit of all, that of inattention, will be born in you, and then a habit of deferring any effort to pay attention. You habitually putting off the good flow of life and the curious behavior to an even later time, thereby postponing the life that is and remains in accord with nature. Don't you realize that when you relax your thought, it is no longer in your power to call it back, either to the quorum or to self-respect or to good order, but instead you do everything that comes upon you and you follow your impulses. Enough quote. So, moving on to the end of my part, I'm going to talk about the strength of the soul, this concept, and the idea of a force of attention. So, what is prosokhe? Analyzing the terms used by Epictetus, we can affirm that attention is a specific tonicity of the soul. He uses the verb teino to stretch, to tense, and the verbs aphiemi and aniemi to express the action of relaxation or release. Therefore, we can assume that the action of tensing and relaxing presupposes the activity of a force. And what force is this? We can assume that it is the strength of the soul, which Cleanthes defines as, I quote, the sufficient tonus in discerning and in acting or not acting, end of quote. That is Stoicus Vetero Fragmenta 1:563. In this way, when Epictetus used the expression tense the soul to refer to the effort of attention, we understand him to be saying the following: tense the soul to generate an attention that is sufficient to discern and to be able to choose how to act. And what are the implications of linking the tension of the soul with the manifestation of attention? There are primarily two consequences. First, it means that each degree of tonicity corresponds to a degree of attention. Second, that the fundamental activity of the rational soul is an act of attention. In other words, the action of paying attention is a basic act of knowledge for the human soul. Every cognitive act is also, first of all, an act of attention. Epictetus says, I quote him, still in Diatribe 4:12, paragraph 15. First, therefore, have these principles at hand, and do not doubt them, but tighten your soul toward the entire scope, to pursue nothing external, nor anything that belongs to others. Rather, as the all-powerful has disposed it, pursue only the things that lie within the sphere of choice, and accept all the rest as it has been given. Furthermore, remember who we are and what our name is, and endeavor to guide our capacities through appropriate actions in accordance with our social relationships, how we should preserve ourselves in relationships. Whenever you deviate from any of these rules, you suffer the penalty at once, not from anything that comes from outside, but from the very action itself. And so, is it already possible to be someone without errors? No, it is unattainable. But this is possible, to strive continuously not to err. And we must be content with, by never relaxing this attention, we at least get rid of some errors. End of quote. So here, I can give you two passages, one from Cicero and another from Chrysippus, that help us to understand the force of attention as a basic act of knowledge of the human soul. According to the Stoics, Cicero says, I quote, The mind itself, which is the source of sensations and even is itself sensation, has a natural force which it directs to the things by which it is moved. End of quote. And then Chrysippus as well says, I quote Chrysippus, a representation is formed by the approach of an external object that impresses the mind through senses. Impulse, akin to representations, is formed by the tonic power of the mind. By stretching this out through sensation, the mind, and here I can understand, attention, touches the object and goes towards it to reach and seize it. End of quote. When we consider the inseparability of the virtues and take the definition of phronesis as being the definition of wisdom, once again, it seems to us that the act of attention is the basic cognitive activity of the human soul. Prudence, phronesis, is defined in Aris Didymus as, I quote, prudence is the knowledge of what must be done, what must not be done, and of neutral things, or the knowledge of goods and evils and neutral things for an animal that is by nature rational and political. End of quote. So, the effort of the soul, the strength of the soul, is precisely defined as the action that attempts to discern between goods, evils, and indifference, in order to thereby respond with an action appropriate to the circumstance. It seems to us that from a physical point of view, attention is a tonicity that merges with the very conception of the soul's strength. And on the other hand, the psychological manifestation of this strength of the soul is experienced as prosokhe, that is, attention, readiness, or vigilance. In this sense, we could say, perhaps extrapolating the limits of the text, that the very essence of prudence is to pay attention. Epictetus says, I quote, Discourses 1.20. And prudence, in turn, is Epictetus. And prudence, in turn, has been granted to us for the contemplation of what? Of what is good and what is bad, and what is neither the one nor the other. What is prudence in itself, then? A good thing, and imprudence, a bad thing. You can thus see that prudence can necessarily take itself and likewise its opposite as an object of contemplation. End of quote. And then finally, bearing all these in mind, let us read a final quote from Epictetus. I said I was really fast, but Epictetus says, for is there any area of life to which our attention should not be extended? Will you do anything worse than by paying attention, or better by not attending? And is there anything, whatever in life, that is done better by those who remain inattentive? Does an inattentive carpenter carry out his work with great precision? Does an inattentive helmsman steer his vessel more safely? And is any function of lesser importance accomplished better through inattention? End of quote. Okay, that's it.
That's Sophia's question.
Thank you, Danilo. That's okay. Well, according to Buddhism, the faculty of attention occupies a central position in its teachings. In the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the discourse on the turning off the wheel of Dhamma, first sermon after the Buddha's enlightenment, whose content is organized around the Four Noble Truths, importance of attention is already emphasized. So to properly contextualize this topic, it's necessary to understand the content of each of these truths. First, we have the truth of suffering. Here, with this doctrine established that existence in the phenomenal world is intrinsically satisfactory and marked by suffering. The second is the origin of suffering. Buddhist thought explains that suffering and satisfaction arise from craving and attachment, since all phenomena are impermanent and subject to change and decay. The third is the truth of the end of suffering. Here, Siddhartha Gautama teaches that the end of suffering is attained by the realization of nirvana, a state in which ignorance regarding the impermanent nature of phenomena is completely gone. Finally, the fourth is the truth of the path, the way that leads to the end of suffering. This truth consolidates the teachings of the previous ones into a practical guide for attaining Nibbana, the noble eightfold path. As its name suggests, the eightfold path consists of 8 interrelated factors that together lead to the liberation from suffering. They are right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right attention, and right concentration. Additionally, these factors are grouped into 3 domains of training: ethical discipline, comprising right speech, right action, and right livelihood; mental discipline, comprising right effort, right attention, and right concentration; and wisdom, right understanding, and right thought. Therefore, in order to understand how attention functions in Buddhist thought, we need to examine its relationship with all the key factors of the mental discipline group, right effort and right concentration. According to the Magga Sutta, the discourse on levels of the path, right effort is defined as the intentional disposition of the will that aims to eliminate unwholesome states and cultivate wholesome ones. Right effort, according to Buddhism, is responsible for generating the energy that serves as the driving force sustaining meditative practice and making possible the refinement of attention and concentration. Right attention, on the other hand, refers to mindfulness, a specific mode of operation of the faculty of attention that can be described as a lucid, non-reactive awareness of the present moment. Unlike ordinary attention that is entangled with its object, leading the mind to interpret experience according to the conceptual categories of its realms, mindfulness means open and unmediated, free from judgment or attachment. This leads to allow the direct the impermanence and the insubstantiality of all phenomena. The third factor is right concentration, which is described as the ability to focus the mind on a single object while excluding any external stimuli. According to Buddha's teachings, as concentration deepens, mental stability increases, enabling the practitioner's mind to attain states of certainty and clarity that provides the necessary basis for right understanding and right thought, the constituents of wisdom. In this context, Buddhist doctrine conceives attention and concentration as distinct, yet inseparable, mutually supportive mental practices. Development of concentration constitutes an act of will on the part of the meditator who deliberately sustains the focus of his mind on a single object. Attention, on the other hand, is not direct toward a specific object, but is characterized by the close observation of the arising and passing on of mental events. The relationship between these two faculties acts as the stabilizing force that enables the refinement of attention. However, for the effective integration of concentration and attention, the application of right effort is indispensable, as it provides the driving energy underlying the maturation of both faculties. Moving on, we examine the right attention through the lens of Satipatthana Sutta, the discourse on the foundations of mindfulness. Following analysis interpretation, the sutta offers progressive training of mindfulness that guides practitioners toward the realization of Nibbana by contemplating body, sensations, mind, and mental objects. In the first foundation, the contemplation of the body, 6 practices are described. The first is the mindfulness of breathing, one of the most important methods accessible to both beginners and advanced meditators. Through the natural and unforced observation of the breath, this practice alone can produce a calm and concentrated mind suitable for insights that lead to the overcoming of suffering and the realization of Nibbana. Next is the mindfulness of postures, aiming to cultivate awareness about the change of body positions, standing, sitting, and lying down, revealing the impermanent nature of our body. Then comes the clear comprehension of bodily activities, when awareness is extended to the motivation of our actions, making it possible to examine the intention, appropriateness, and resilient characteristic of each act. The remaining practices are the key practice of the body foundation, the contemplation of anatomical parts, and the repulsiveness of the choice to dissolve attachment to physical form. Next comes the contemplation of the changes of the four elements of our body: earth, water, fire, and air, representing solid, cohesion, heat, and movement, primary attributes of mental phenomena, of material phenomena. And finally, there is the contemplation of death, a reflection on the impermanence of physical existence. The second foundation, the contemplation of sensations, involves mindfully observing the sensations that arise and pass away, classifying them as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. The goal is to perceive that they transient flow and cultivate equanimity, keeping the mind free from craving and pressure. The third foundation, the contemplation of mind, focuses on the mutable states of consciousness. In this regard, we must distinguish between the five unwholesome conditions of the mind. They are desire, anger, delusion, contraction, and distraction, and the four wholesome states: the exalted, the submissible, the concentrated, and the liberated mind. And we have the fourth foundation. The contemplation of mental objects encompasses five groups of practices: the five hindrances, the five aggregates, the six sense bases, the seven factors of enlightenment, and the four noble truths. The five hindrances are the obstacles to common insight. They are sensual desire, ego, sloth and torpor, restlessness, and doubt. Next, the contemplation of the aggregates reveals that what we usually identify as our personal self is merely a temporary combination of material form, sensation, perception, volition, and consciousness. After that comes the contemplation of the six sense bases and its functions: the eye in seeing, ear in hearing, nose in smelling, the tongue in tasting, the body in sensing, and the mind in recognizing. This practice aims to expose the mechanism of sensory contact that gives rise to attachment and suffering. Then comes the contemplation of the seven factors of enlightenment, which was cultivated as direct causes of nibbana. They are mindfulness, investigation, joy, tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. Finally, the contemplation of the Four Noble Truths represents the culmination of the meditation stage. We must observe mindfully the direct nature of suffering, its causes, the way to extinguish those causes, and the path conducting to its extinction. Then the Buddha finds that diligent practice of these four foundations inevitably leads to the ultimate. The Satipatthana Sutta, therefore, presents a direct and comprehensive path that, through the gradual refinement of attention, makes it possible to attain the state of Nibbana. In conclusion, Buddhism, attention denotes the mode of operation of this fact that is direct, non-conceptual, and non-judgmental. As shown within the Noble Eightfold Path, the right attention, or mindfulness, constitutes a central element of Buddhist philosophy, forming a triad with right effort and right concentration. Taken together, these three factors articulate the dynamic process of Buddhist mental discipline. So, through the coordination of effort, mindfulness, and concentration, the practitioner defines the effect of attention, discerning the transient and selfless nature of all phenomena, which culminates in the liberation from suffering and the realization of Nibbana. Finally, concerning the methodological contrast between Stoicism and Buddhism, we can see that the cultivation of attention in Buddhism is presented through a systematic technical approach, shown in the Satipatthana Sutta. Here, mindfulness developed as a progressive method of contemplation that had four foundations: body, sensations, mind, and mental objects, which gradually refine attention, leading the practitioner to perceive the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature of movement. This practice is not a rational examination of representation, but a direct, and I say again, non-conceptual observation that suspends an intellectual interpretation. By observing the arising and passing experiences, wants of the roots of attachment, interest that perpetuate suffering. The culmination of this process is nibbana, the liberation from the conditions of craving and illusion, and delusion. Ultimately, for Epictetus, attention represents a rational vigilance that safeguards awareness and harmonizes human reason with the cosmic order. For Buddhism, it manifests as mediating contemplative awareness that makes us understand the impermanent and selfless nature of existence. Thus, while the Stoic idea of perfect reason, the Buddhist one surpass it. But yet, both share a common aspiration to overcome human suffering. So, thanks.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Danilo, thank you very much, André. We'll open the floor now to discussion. Again, if there are any questions from the online attendees, please feel free to put comments or questions in the chat, but we'll open it up to the room here first to give people time. All right. Aldo.
Thanks, Danilo and André, for your speech. Called my attention, the definition of attention that Danilo told us as the first act of knowledge, right? So, can we imagine, can we think that this first act of attention is similar to the direct act of pointing to something and saying, okay. So,
You just need to talk a little louder. We can't hear you.
oh, yeah. So, again, when we say that attention is the first act of knowledge, can we understand it as as the first direct act by which we identify something in our presence, something that is affecting our senses and our hegemonical? Could we understand this act of attention as an epistemic act? And to André, attention in Buddhism would be an epistemic act also, or would be something totally different? Danilo, você tem que chegar ali. Vocês entendem ali, lá.
Okay. Let me check the question. If you're asking if any act of attention is correspond to an act of epistemic act. Yes, I think so. Because what I'm understanding is that all this sensory data happens when the cone and even the lecta happens. I am with attention or not, doesn't matter. It happens. It's automatically. So when I tense my soul, I become more aware of it. And that's changing the quality of my response to that. So I think yes. Because I don't need to do an effort of attention to realize that I am in a room. I accept that. But I need to do an effort of attention to not be swept away by a fantasia that strikes my hegemonic home with intensity. For what I mean, yeah. But I think what done is I think it seems that this effort of nature correspond to the strength of the soul, strength and power of the soul, which it turns it possible to not give an a mechanical assent. Doesn't matter if this assent is positive or negative. It matters if it is naturally aligned or not.
Okay. As for Buddhism,
Another
okay,
question.
You wanted to answer.
Your first question.
Yeah, but
I can't remember. I can't remember.
as for Buddhism, I would say no. Epistemic act of mind, epistemic function of mind, is different from attention. For attention, sati in Pali, is an observation of what is happening in the mind, what is it. There is no engagement of faculty of attention. It's strange with other methods like I'm thinking now, but the act of attention is you are observing that you are thinking. So the act of meditation and development of attention in Buddhism is something that is different from the epistemical function of our minds.
You said that being aware of being in a room, if you can give more intensity to this awareness, does it mean that you can see more things, or you can see things, external things, in a more detailed way, or that you can see, you can think about your own reactions related to these things in a more conscious way?
Both things. Both things, because see, the representation of the sensory data that comes to my head when it comes from this room is the sunlight out there. But I'm not necessarily aware of the sunlight. But it's reaching to my hegemonic because of my senses. I can't block that. It's a natural channel, right? So if I place my soul to the representation that is reaching me right now, I can start to be aware of the sound of the air conditioner, of the sunlight, of the movement of the other people in the room. I don't need to look at that, but I have a very peripheral view. But that's all part of my representation. I'm not necessarily looking at it entirely. But I emphasize it a psychological perspective of an perspective of the attention. But it is in Epictetus. We need to bring attention to modulate. That's anachronical. My response to the appropriate actions, to the relationships with the other. It's important. It's not an inner attention. It's inner and outer.
Congratulations, my friend. Danilo, I don't know if I understand correct, but at the beginning of your speech, you said we must to harmonize our soul's instinct with nature. You are talking about eugeosis because it's just rational instinct. I don't know you're talking about eugeosis. When you say we must harmonize our natural or soul's instinct, you said that with this, but both is the same thing. eleikiosis or soul's natures and physis. It's not the same thing.
If I understand what you're saying, yeah, I will the word impulse. Yes,
Oh,
yes, you're correct. Analyzing the soul's impulse. Because everything is in movement.
Yes,
Right?
right,
Everything
right.
is in movement. So the development of the chaos is actually possible through the acquisition of catalepsis, right?
Mm. Right.
The chief acquisition of catalepsis, which, for your term, modulates my impulses, because it changes my human states. And when it's changed my human states, in other words, means it's changed how my inner impulses are in relation with each other. Right? And what I am interpreting in Epictetus is that you cannot do that without paying attention to yourself and to the others. So it is neat to the movements of the soul, to the impulses of the soul, to everything. And when he says that, it's supposed that it's possible to develop the capacity for attention. This is provided. We have provided. We don't take responsibility for it. We are not going to be free in attention. We have a natural capacity for attention, but if we don't practice, we are not going to be able to pay attention.
I got it. Thank you. Thank you.
No thanks.
No.
We can speak later.
Sure.
So I'm going to pick up on that. Is attention and expertise
It's a mind fact, the development of the subject is technique. It's talked about the love, the texts, meditation, coding, methods to develop attention. So the technique is fact.
For Stoics, I don't think it's a technique. I think it's because it's in Epictetus we have that passage that we have the appetite that are epistema and technai, and we have the other appetite that are acquired by ascesis. They are called Dinucci. So in this list of appetite are acquired by ascesis. We have strength of the soul. And I think attention is similar to the strength of the soul. Very similar. So I think attention is acquired by ascesis. It's a genius acquired by ascesis. Because if we say that attention is a technique, we are saying that we have a theoremata. And we don't have a theoremata for attention. I think we can teach the ascesis for attention development. That's the problem. It's not technique, but we can teach it.
Okay, then that leads me back to the question Aldo asked about the epistemic act. So then how does that idea of it as a dunamis rather than as a techne, how does that play into that answer about attention as an epistemic act? With the kind of emphasis on epistemic rather than the emphasis on act.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
It's nice, isn't it, to deliver a paper and have some new questions. Good. Okay. We'll talk some more. Okay. good. Other questions? Yeah, Aldo.
Just one more question concerning just one more question concerning, I think it's in the first epistemic act. It is the first epistemic act, but at the same time, it cooperates to act according to nature, okay? To act, to do the catechon, right? So it is essential to act and to be according to nature for us. What do you think?
I agree. I agree. I agree. Everything is in movement. The representations reaches. If I am not vigilant to the impulse that provokes inside me, as Epictetus said, I'm going to be swept away. I'm going to follow my impulses. And these impulses are correlated to my dogma, my dogmata. Not necessarily my dogmata are correct and are true. So, to be in the middle of this ironic events, and it's the right.
But you need to be aware in order to act accordingly.
You need to be aware. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And in order to be according to nature, right?
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions? No? Okay, great. Well, then it leaves that only for us to again say thank you to André and Danilo for an excellent paper. Thank you very much. All right. Yeah, we're going to have a small break here for 5 minutes to shift the room around for tech and to have a small comfort break. So we'll be back in 5 online. Thanks. Super. Okay, I think we need to get started.
Okay. Vilmar is online.
Great. In Portugal. And did you send me your bios?
Yes. That's the well, WhatsApp.
Sure.
WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Interesting English.
I have your, but not your bio. Have your handout, but not your bio. Your information.
Ah, yes.
With André, I had here. Oh, perfect. Can I use your phone and then hand it back to you? Oh, okay, you're gonna send it.
Gostou?
Perfect.
Danilo, 60. Não daqui do lado, né?
Great,
Não,
thank you
Danilo,
all
daqui do
so
lado
much.
não.
Yes, we're working on Brazilian time. It's like herding cats here, but it's good. Oh, okay. Yeah, I am. Yes. Okay. So again, it is a pleasure to welcome Vilmar Prata, who is a researcher working with the graduate program in philosophy at the Federal University of Espirito Santo here in Vitoria. And he is in a postdoctoral degree with a FAPES scholarship. He has a PhD in philosophy from the Federal University of Sergipe, and he's a member of the research group in ancient philosophy, Viva Vox, and a member of the Epictetus GT of POF. Vilmar will be presenting today in Portuguese. So I think with Google Meet, there's also the possibility of translating if your Portuguese is like mine. So Vilmar, it's a pleasure. Please, we hand over to you.
Thank you. Bom, vou apresentar o olhar Foucaultiano para a constituição do sujeito à luz de Epicteto. A atenção que Foucault dedica à filosofia helenística e seus recortes no interior do estoicismo, apresentado ao longo do curso A Hermenêutica do Sujeito, entre os anos de 81 e 82, ministrados no Collège de France, sobre o problema da constituição do sujeito, faz emergir um olhar específico em direção à constituição de um ethos, pautado a partir de técnicas às quais o sujeito se vê sob o olhar do outro e atento aos seus direcionamentos. Essa relação estabelecida entre mestre e discípulo ao longo da filosofia antiga, dos gregos aos helenistas, sendo acentuada no estoicismo, chama a atenção do filósofo francês que, por sua vez, mergulha nos textos e cartas de diversos filósofos da Escola do Pórtico. Neste trabalho especificamente, busco fazer um recorte do olhar Foucaultiano para alguns apontamentos realizados sobre Epicteto, um dos grandes nomes do estoicismo. Trata-se de uma breve reflexão, pois o tema proposto é, sem dúvida alguma, vasto e inesgotável, tanto por parte do filósofo francês quanto por parte do filósofo histórico em questão. Nessa linha, buscarei, além de sugerir uma reflexão, problematizar com Foucault as questões relacionadas à constituição de si a partir da perspectiva epictetiana, tentando abrir caminho para se pensar o sujeito da atualidade que se constitui pelas mesmas vias do sujeito greco-romano, ou seja, a partir do outro. Mas a questão é, quem seria este outro e, mais ainda, como se conhecer e como reconhecer esse outro como sujeito que se constitui a partir de práticas e técnicas de si. Quem é o sujeito outro? O problema do sujeito, para Foucault, tornou-se assumidamente, pelo próprio filósofo, prioridade em seus trabalhos, tendo sua principal questão filosófica de maior destaque e relevância sido problematizada a partir de 1981, quando em seus cursos e escritos passou a discutir fortemente os variados processos de constituição que levaram e ainda levam o indivíduo à condição de sujeito. Pautando-se em discursos atravessados por jogos de saber-poder, Foucault trabalha em um enviesamento da vontade de verdade em consonância com a subjetividade das relações supostamente estabelecidas entre sujeitos. Pensar o sujeito neste sentido, passou a ser uma tarefa urgente e criteriosa, na qual o filósofo mergulhou corajosamente e buscou, a partir de então, todos os recursos teóricos do pensamento antigo que fossem pertinentes a seu interesse filosófico. Tal viés movimenta a história do Ocidente desde os gregos, passando pelos helenísticos, reverberando no cristianismo e resultando em desdobramentos significativos que mudaram o modo pelo qual o sujeito olha tanto para si quanto para o outro na cultura moderna. Mas quem seria esse sujeito outro, identificado por Foucault e rastreado em suas pesquisas desde a antiguidade? Ele vai nos dizer que, abre aspas, se podemos identificar facilmente na cultura moderna esse outro, cujo estatuto e cujas funções seria sem dúvida necessário analisar mais precisamente, esse outro indispensável para que eu possa dizer a verdade sobre mim mesmo, seja ele o médico, o psiquiatra, o psicólogo, o padre, em compensação na cultura antiga, em que, no entanto, sua presença é perfeitamente atestada, é preciso reconhecer que seu estatuto é muito mais variável, muito mais vago, muito menos nitidamente recortado e institucionalizado. Esse outro, tão necessário para que eu possa dizer a verdade sobre mim mesmo, esse outro, na cultura antiga, pode ser um filósofo de profissão, mas também qualquer um. Fecha aspas. Essa variação do sujeito-outro que Foucault identifica sob a ótica desses dois modelos, o institucional pertence ao mundo moderno e o outro livre de qualquer encargo e obrigação institucional, mas que, em contrapartida, seu comprometimento com a verdade de si e do outro está vinculado à responsabilidade de se constituir enquanto sujeito com e a partir das relações estabelecidas para além de seu próprio eu. Torna-se para Foucault um ponto de bifurcação capaz de revelar com mais detalhes as práticas que dividem esses dois tipos de sujeito-outro. Um que tem compromisso com as regras institucionais e muitas vezes vive em função delas, e o sujeito-outro que toma como compromisso a verdade de si, que se estabelece a partir de um ethos que vai além das relações interpessoais, um ethos universal e agregador. Esse modelo do sujeito-outro, vislumbrado na cultura moderna, parece trazer aos poucos um novo modo de pensar o sujeito em esferas estritamente institucionais que foram se constituindo ao longo dos séculos, como os presídios, as clínicas psiquiátricas, os hospitais, as escolas, enfim, todo tipo de instituição que nasceu justamente do interesse do sujeito em se constituir, que, conforme o próprio filósofo vai constatar em trabalhos anteriores, que, com o passar do tempo, tornaram-se lugares de controle disciplinar desses respectivos sujeitos, estabelecendo relações de saber-poder que, por muitas vezes, se fizeram tensas e opressoras. No entanto, que nas relações greco-romanas não houvesse esse jogo de saber-poder, não que nas relações greco-romanas não houvesse esse jogo de saber-poder, mas era menos tensionado por não estar vinculado a uma instituição propriamente dita, aos moldes do que viria a surgir anos mais tarde. E mais ainda, o compromisso maior era com a constituição de si a partir do interesse do indivíduo pela verdade, que de modo algum estaria desvinculada do universo. Algo que chama a atenção de Foucault desde o início de suas indagações sobre o sujeito é que, sem exceção, nenhum indivíduo se constitui por si só, ou seja, a constituição de si está diretamente ligada ao outro e vice-versa. Apesar de ser um exercício de si sobre si, uma conversão a si, o indivíduo só consegue fazer esse caminho com êxito mediante a voz e o olhar orientador do outro, que geralmente trata-se de alguém capaz de orientar neste processo. Alguém que já traz consigo uma bagagem de experiências adquiridas ao longo do tempo e dos espaços que ocupou nesse tempo. Um sujeito que quase sempre possui idade razoavelmente avançada e que, de fato, vive o que pensa e o que ensina, ou seja, que sua vida prática cotidiana esteja em afinamento com o que ensina. Alguém que seja exemplo para quem quer aprender a se constituir, tanto em palavras como ações. Este alguém é chamado, portanto, de sábio ou filósofo. Se para os gregos essa relação do homem sábio, do filósofo como um aprendiz, já era usualmente estabelecida e praticada conforme os costumes próprios da Grécia Antiga, tendo passagens emblemáticas, os quais Foucault toma alguns recortes para pensar questões relacionadas ao governo de si do outro, ao cuidado de si do outro e o conhecimento de si, como Sócrates e Alcibíades, por exemplo. Mesmo que, levando em consideração que para os gregos não se tinha essa ideia de sujeito que Foucault se interessa e toma enquanto deslocamento que fazem do indivíduo um sujeito a partir de sua constituição enquanto alguém que olha para si e se subjetiva. No helenismo, no entanto, essa relação que podemos chamar de mestre-discípulo não mudou muito no que diz respeito ao mestre que instrui alguém que quer ser instruído à luz da filosofia. Haja vista que o foco aqui não é discutir o que mudou na relação mestre-discípulo dos gregos aos helenistas, como, por exemplo, a relação de amizade erótica comum entre o filósofo e seu aluno nos gregos, que foi desconsiderada pelo helenismo, bem como o interesse político primevo em aprender com o mestre em como governar a polis, deixando o cuidado de si em segundo plano pelo jovem interessado, já que o interesse era exclusivamente o conhecimento de si para governar o outro e muitas vezes o cuidado de si era negligenciado. Evidentemente, as escolas helenistas souberam, de modo geral, absorver muita coisa dos gregos, que veio a corroborar para estruturar as práticas e técnicas mais eficazes de se constituir enquanto sujeito ético e sujeito de verdade, que assume o próprio eu como prioridade nesse processo de constituição de si. Processo este que, aliás, só tem fim com a própria morte e que, para além disso, um eu que não está escondido dentro de si e deve ser descoberto, mas um eu que se constitui a cada dia nas práticas e técnicas ensinadas pelo mestre. Uma coisa ficou clara para Foucault em relação à ideia da constituição de si já no estoicismo, destacando o outro como mediador desse movimento para dentro de si. Vale destacar que não é só o outro enquanto mestre que possui lugar de destaque, mas também o outro enquanto discípulo, uma vez que ambos aprendem juntos e se constituem juntos, pois o mestre também, ao orientar seu discípulo, é impelido a repensar sua própria luz da questão levantada e apresentada pelo discípulo. Foi exatamente o que ele fez questão de destacar: a relevância do outro na constituição de si a partir de uma gama de saberes que, ao serem tomados como lanternas a iluminar esse caminhar, tornam-se preponderantemente também ferramenta de poder. Tão complexo é este jogo que Foucault vai afirmar que, abre aspas, os saberes estudados na especificidade de sua veridicação, as relações de poder estudadas não como uma emanação de um poder substancial e invasivo, mas nos procedimentos pelos quais a conduta dos homens é governada, e, enfim, os modos de constituição do sujeito através das práticas de si. Foucault acaba por notar que esse outro não se resume em sujeito mestre ou sujeito discípulo. Ao se deparar com Epicteto, a ideia de outro se estende ao universo, ao cosmos, uma vez que Epicteto vai considerar todo o universo sem desconsiderar qualquer ser vivo como este outro que deve ser cuidado e deve cuidar. Mas ainda devem estar focados em algo comum a todos, o próprio bem. E este próprio bem não se adquire sozinho, mas mediante o bem de todos. Foucault vai destacar que este vínculo se dá a partir de dois eixos, porém nos interessa aqui destacar apenas um neste momento. Ele vai averiguar que a concepção estoica do homem como ser constituído enquanto sujeito, facilmente a encontramos expostas em vários textos. Tomaremos Epicteto como exemplo. Em Epicteto, a concepção do vínculo entre cuidado de si e cuidado dos outros desenvolve-se em dois níveis. Primeiramente, em um nível natural, é a concepção do vínculo providencial. Com efeito, diz Epicteto, a ordem do mundo está de tal sorte organizada que todos e quaisquer seres vivos buscam todos eles seu próprio bem. Neste sentido, Foucault não deixa passar despercebido a relevância da natureza para os estoicos. A importância desse tema para Epicteto é tão forte ao ponto do universo ser considerado por ele como um outro a ser cuidado, um outro que cuida. Sem o cosmos não existe homem e mulher, é inviável a constituição do indivíduo em sujeito. Não basta apenas a relação interpessoal entre os homens, não basta a relação mestre-discípulo, como era o foco central dos gregos. No estoicismo surge este novo outro que deve ser considerado, cuidado e governado a partir da persuasão e jamais pela imposição, com tanto zelo quanto se cuida de se governar a si e ao outro. Epicteto compreende este universo como extensão desse indivíduo que se constitui enquanto sujeito, mas não um sujeito isolado, estritamente político, mergulhado nas relações de saber e poder. Ao contrário, um sujeito que se constitui primeiramente conforme a natureza, se compreende conforme este cosmos e, a partir dessa compreensão, olha para si e para o outro no sentido de um governo que vai elencar o bem comum de todos. Este bem compreendido como a verdade pautada por um ethos que garante a preservação de uma vida feliz, sem exceção, porque todos são importantes e dignos de cuidado, com suas respectivas responsabilidades de também cuidar do outro. Assim, o si e o outro que desenrolam em uma dinâmica de governamentalidade, na qual Foucault manifesta suas inquietações, ao se dispor a apresentar em diagnóstico do sujeito da atualidade, nessa esteira, a proposta é, então, fazer um recorte dessas aulas da hermenêutica do sujeito, na qual encontramos uma análise minuciosa sobre a constituição de si do sujeito, tomando alguns pensadores gregos e helenísticos, destacando o olhar Foucaultiano para Epicteto, a fim de problematizar a possibilidade de constituição de si nos tempos atuais, à luz das orientações epictetianas visadas por Foucault, e, para além dessa reflexão, questionar se existem, de fato, tais possibilidades. Vou ficar por aqui.
Alguém pode traduzir?
Great, yeah, Joelson, over to you.
Chamou a atenção, Vilmar. Oi? Isso, para o inglês. O que me chamou a atenção na sua fala foi o seguinte: você fala que, eu não sei se é um dos instrumentos para o cuidado de si é a persuasão. Aí eu fiquei pensando, essa persuasão, como se dá essa persuasão? Ele está falando de retórica? Ele está falando sobre o quê? Porque quando eu penso em persuasão, eu sempre penso em retórica, como esse instrumento por excelência, né? O próprio Platão, que uma vez usa, ele vai aceitar depois a própria retórica como uma forma de você tem que entender isso. Se você ficar falando, se for o estudo, né? Ele aborda a retórica como um instrumento de persuasão. O que tipo de persuasão é essa? Eu acho que está resumindo é isso.
O Foucault, na hermenêutica do sujeito, até na Coragem da Verdade, do Governo de Si dos Outros, ele vai chamar a atenção que essa relação que se dá mestre-discípulo, esse deslocamento dos gregos para os helenistas, para os históricos, muda o ponto de persuasão que, por exemplo, Seneca e Epicteto, eles buscam persuadir com as próprias ações. Ou seja, é a filosofia como modo de vida. Não basta falar como sofista. Você tem que viver, assim como Sócrates também, né, mostra isso. Você tem que viver de maneira sábia para se tornar, talvez, na palavra exemplo, mas mostrar que realmente aquilo ali se trata de uma verdade de si, mesmo que ela seja subjetivada o tempo todo, porque é um movimento que o Foucault chama atenção, que é um movimento de subjetivação. Porém, essa persuasão passa por uma prática de si, por técnicas de si que entra pela questão da disciplina, do uso dos prazeres, por exemplo, que o Foucault vai trazer, de uma dietética, e o que o Seneca, por exemplo, traz nas cartas de orientação, por exemplo, a Lucílio, o próprio Epicteto, então são nas diatribes, que vai dizer como lidar com determinado tipo de situação ou determinado tipo de pessoas, né, e de maneira que aquilo se torne menos penoso. E a principal é fazer da sabedoria um modo de vida, né? O que eu percebo dessa persuasão não passa só pela palavra, pela retórica, mas pela prática.
Eu acho que é o mais importante, né? Pelo visto. Não é só.
Ok. Vilmar, eu tenho uma pergunta. Primeiro, obrigado por você ter trazido aí o seu trabalho, que eu acho que pessoalmente ainda não tinha presenciado. Mas me chamou a atenção quando você fala que essa questão da relação do mestre-discípulo, cuidado do outro, né, que é identificado no período histórico, você citou o helenismo, o cristianismo, etc. Mas eu, ouvindo a sua fala, eu entendi que você falou que no helenismo não há uma identificação clara disso. No helenismo não há uma identificação clara disso. Então, eu entendi corretamente ou foi um equívoco da minha audição? Você fez essa afirmação? Qual é a evidência de que no período do helenismo não houve essa relação mestre-discípulo, cuidado do outro?
Não, eu disse que no helenismo a relação mestre-discípulo, essa constituição de si, não tinha o peso institucional. Que passou a ganhar mais especificamente a partir do cristianismo, que absorve dos históricos essa relação de escuta, essa relação de orientação que existia no helenismo, só que não era tão fortemente institucionalizado. Claro que existiam as escolas filosóficas, mas não tinha o peso que foi ganhando ao longo do tempo, e eu acredito que com o cristianismo, essa readaptação, por exemplo, para a prática da confissão, que o Foucault vai trazer isso até na História da Sexualidade 4, as confissões da carne, e aí focando mais para a questão da sexualidade, se institucionalizou mais. E aí eu trago uma outra questão, que é o filósofo da antiguidade comprometido com a própria filosofia em si, e o filósofo de hoje, no sentido daquele que busca a filosofia como modo de vida, como Foucault vai dizer, também tem esse peso institucional, de demanda institucional, por exemplo, da universidade, dos trabalhos acadêmicos, da pesquisa, né? Então, a filosofia passa a ser, de algum modo, mais uma faculdade dentre tantas de se formar, ter um diploma, que o próprio Foucault critica isso até, né, quando ele vai falar de um texto dele, que ele fala a questão do diploma, qual a importância do diploma, né? Claro que ele faz uma crítica porque se resumiu a filosofia muito a esses parâmetros do muro acadêmico. Eu e o Aldo sempre conversa sobre isso, inclusive, de que a filosofia ela tem que estar também para fora da academia, né? Senão não...
Isso daí é uma interpretação do Foucault, né?
Não é nenhuma interpretação, eu acredito que é uma problematização que ele traz.
Mas ele ignora a questão das escolas de filosofia?
Não, de forma alguma. Não. Não,
eu acho que você falou aí da sofística, né? Ele coloca meio que no escanteio, como todo mundo coloca a escola sofística no escanteio.
É porque o interesse do Foucault é entender, na verdade, como se dá a constituição do sujeito.
Uhum.
O problema para ele, a partir de 80, quando ele vai fazer a hermenêutica do sujeito, as aulas, ele começa a se interessar pela constituição de si. Então, ele vai trazer temas como a subjetivação, a questão da verdade, mas isso sempre buscando esse interesse por como se dá a constituição de si, como o sujeito se constitui dentro de uma relação com o outro, uma relação consigo mesmo.
Ok. Obrigado.
Are there other questions? Yeah.
Vilmar, eu fiquei curioso que você falou agora que na época o cristianismo trouxe uma coisa nova para a filosofia. Você podia especificar bem? Isso aí,
não é que trouxe...
Você falou. Assim.
Então, não é bem que trouxe uma coisa nova. A leitura que o Foucault faz, e que eu tento, é que o cristianismo absorveu dos históricos do helenismo essa relação mestre-discípulo. Então, se parece que houve uma readaptação.
Conscientemente? Vamos adaptar?
Aí, conscientemente, não. Aí eu acho que é muito complicado fazer essa afirmação. Eu acho que foi um próprio movimento e deslocamento de saberes. Né, dos primeiros padres da igreja, São Crisóstomo, São João da Cruz, né? Então, assim, o Foucault vai trazer isso na História da Sexualidade 4, então ele vai fazendo esses links dos primeiros padres da igreja com Musônio Rufus, por exemplo, quando ele vai trazer a questão do matrimônio, né? Então...
Olha, Santo Agostinho já era inimigo mortal desses históricos.
Sim,
né?
Mas são essas pequenas sutilezas de deslocamentos. Mas o Foucault está interessado a entender como que dá esses deslocamentos a partir para se pensar o sujeito, a história da constituição do sujeito. Né? Eu acredito que não tenha sido proposital, ou vamos lá, mas eu acredito, por exemplo, a confissão, há essa proximidade dessa terapêutica, dessa relação com o outro a partir da escuta, do falar. E o próprio Foucault, no texto que ele vai falar da psicanálise, ele faz também essa relação da analista analisando também, ele faz e até ele faz uma crítica à psicanálise com a questão da confissão, né? E aí ele vai aos estoicos, essa relação de mestre-discípulo.
Então você está... Aí tem uma coisa interessante, especificamente a confissão é derivada da relação mestre-discípulo. Pode ser, né? Não estou duvidando.
Isso não é uma afirmação. O que se dá para se pensar pelo formato que é colocado, o sacramento da confissão dentro do cristianismo se aproxima muito da relação mestre-discípulo. Por exemplo, você pega as cartas de Seneca Lucílio. O problema não era a questão da culpa e do pecado, mas era ouvir de Seneca, no caso, como lidar com as intempéries da vida, ou como tentar manter uma disciplina em relação aos apetites. Né? Com o cristianismo se ganha um peso de culpa, de pecado. Então, o ato de confissão, a igreja, a partir dessa relação do indivíduo que vai confessar, passa a ter uma relação de expiação de pecado, buscando o aval de uma instituição, para se aproximar da salvação. Então, aí tem essa questão do pecado, da culpa, que é diferente. Então, há esse deslocamento que o Foucault ele não afirma, mas ele dá sinais de situações próximas, né? Agora, se tem, você não pode...
Porque você, lá, historicamente, você não pode, lá, por exemplo, estudando a história da igreja, você não pode buscar, de certa forma, um elo assim, se alguém já fez isso, porque isso aí porque a teologia deve ter, estudos teológicos devem buscar essa, né? Devem ser.
E dando outro salto, por exemplo...
Porque é interessante a história da confissão, né? Por quê? Né?
Aí, dando um outro salto, por exemplo, o Foucault ele é muito criticado pelos psicanalistas, porque ele aproxima, ele faz essa aproximação da psicanálise também com essa coisa da confissão cristã, né? E principalmente ligada à questão da sexualidade. Então, ele criou um problema na época com a psicanálise, né? Também.
Vilmar,
Obrigada pela sua fala. Eu já não me recordo muita coisa de Foucault, assim, para mim é um pouco como se fosse outra encarnação, mas me pareceu que muito disso que você está falando, que foi problematizado pelo Eduardo, tem um possível fio condutor dessa transformação, né, dessa relação, que é a noção de parresia.
Sim.
Né? É a mudança da noção de parresia na relação mestre e discípulo do estoicismo para uma outra noção de parresia que ocorre no cristianismo, né? Que a parresia ela está necessariamente relacionada com uma postura diante de uma divindade que também já não é a divindade estoica, que é uma outra concepção de divindade, né? Em que há todo um deslocamento da relação de poder, tanto daquele que escuta a confissão, quanto daquele que faz a confissão, porque tem um poder acima de todos esses, ao qual ambos estão submetidos, digamos assim, né? E eu acho que tem uma outra coisa legal na sua fala, da gente pensar, que é essa mudança que acontece no último Foucault, de falar de um processo de subjetivação que agora não é exatamente um processo de assujeitamento, mas sim uma política de resistência, justamente ao assujeitamento que acontece por essa construção de si, né? E aí me parece que tem também uma mudança na maneira como Foucault está lendo a questão do poder mesmo, né? Que começa com uma questão do poder muito relacionada com o Nietzsche e que ele começa a reconsiderar a partir dessa leitura dele dos antigos, embora Nietzsche não esteja totalmente ausente aí.
A grande que você traz a questão da parresia, a questão toda é o conceito de verdade. Que para os antigos a verdade estava com o próprio sujeito e ela era subjetivada. Com o cristianismo, vem Cristo dizer: eu sou o caminho, a verdade e a vida. Então, a verdade ela é personificada, ela é divinizada, e aí o sujeito não busca mais a verdade em si, mas busca testemunhar uma verdade que está configurada no indivíduo. E aí passa a ter essa relação institucional, porque é a igreja que vai trazer a própria verdade. Então, o sujeito deixa de ser esse ato parresiástico, passa a ser um ato de testemunho de conversão cristã. Não é mais a coragem da verdade de si.
Tem um ato passivo de punição ou de elogio, vamos dizer assim. Né? Obrigada.
Great, thank you very much. Are there other questions for online? Oh. No, okay, well, then it's only to thank you. Great, thank you very much. It's been wonderful to see you. We'll be back tomorrow. Right? Tomorrow? No, after. Oh, sorry, Aldo. No, I don't have the program because I'm looking at the screen. So, okay, but we'll switch places now, yeah? You're gonna come here, yeah, you're gonna switch. Okay.
You know my Bible. I have a Bible. Just. Just a minute.
Great, thanks very much. Right, so it's a great pleasure to introduce my dear friend Aldo Dinucci, who holds a PhD in classical philosophy from PUC Rio. He is a professor of ancient philosophy at the Federal University of Espirito Santo here in Vitoria, and he is the coordinator of the AMPOF working group on Epictetus and philosophical marginalia. He is an honorary research fellow at the University of Kent in Canterbury and a researcher at the British Academy between 2018 and 2023. He now has several projects funded by the Brazilian CNPq, national funding body. Among other works, he has recently published translations from Greek into Portuguese of Epictetus's Manual, Epictetus's Discourses, Book 1, and more recently, Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. He is also author of the Stoic Manual and the dissemination blog Viva Vox Stoicismo. Aldo, over to you.
Thanks, Kelly. I will present a draft that we have been, me and Kelly, working on in the last years. I think this is some research we are doing well. I will present, I don't have out, but I will present it in the just a moment. In the Google Meet. Can you see? Not yet. Now, in the Google Meet link. Yeah. Well, logic for Epictetus has practical applications beyond engaging in discussions. To understand one of these other uses, we turn our attention to the Chrysippean concept of conditional. According to Chrysippus, a conditional is true when the contradictory of the consequent is in conflict with the antecedent. For example, take the conditional. If it is day, there is light. The contradictory of the consequence, there is light, it is not the case that there is light, which in turn conflicts with the antecedent, it is day. This kind of conditional requires a stronger connection between consequence and antecedent than that required by the material implication, which allows a conditional statement to be replaced by a disjunction in which the antecedent is negated. In the case of material implication, A conditional is true when it's not the case that antecedent is true and the consequence is false. The Chrysippean criterion of conditionals underpins the following passage in which Epictetus talks about implication and its use when building moral judgments about someone's action. And the next slide. Someone showers quickly. Do not say that he showers badly, but that he showers quickly. Someone drinks a lot of wine. Do not say that he drinks badly, but that he drinks much. For before determining this opinion or decision by which he acts, how can you know whether he acts badly? In this way, it will not occur to you to understand the comprehensive fantasia of something, but to give essence to other things. Well, the passage implicitly contains two arguments behind the conditionals that can be formalized as follows. The next slide. Just a moment. If someone showers quickly, then he showers badly. He showers quickly, therefore he showers badly. And the second, if someone drinks a lot of wine, then he drinks badly. He drinks a lot of wine, therefore he drinks badly. In both cases, we have instances of ponendo ponens, one of the undemonstrated moods of Stoic dialectics, according to which, if A, then B, A, therefore B. The arguments are valid according to these moods, but the conditionals they contain are unsound according to the Chrysippean criterion of a conditional, because in the first case, the contradictory of he showers badly, that is, this is not the case that he showers badly, does not conflict with someone showers quickly. And in the second case, the contradictory of he drinks badly, that is, it's not the case that he drinks badly, does not conflict with he drinks a lot of wine. Here, we can examine Epictetus' approach to a single preconception bad. The question Epictetus implicitly raises is whether we can apply bad to someone's action. In the case of the examples of showering and drinking. From the mere observation that someone is drinking a lot, we cannot deduce that he drinks badly, since the sensory information alone provides no basis for making a moral judgment about a human action. We must also know the reason why the action is performed before making such a judgment to make a sound conditional from it, and consequently, a valid argument. For instance, I think it's the next slide. If someone showers quickly, unaware of hygienic rules, then he showers badly. He showers quickly, unaware of hygienic rules, therefore he showers badly. In the second example, if someone drinks a lot of wine against medical recommendations, he drinks badly. He drinks a lot of wine against medical recommendations, therefore he drinks badly. But on the other hand, someone can do the same actions in the right way, which is the next slide. If someone showers quickly and is in a hurry to take his son to a medical exam, then he showers well. He showers quickly because he is in a hurry to take his son to a medical exam. Therefore, he showers well. And the second example, if someone drinks a lot of wine following medical recommendations, then he drinks well. If he drinks a lot of wine following medical recommendations, as some people I know, therefore he drinks well. The same actions can be explained and judged in different ways depending on the reasons for which they were performed. Moreover, Epictetus tells us that if we refrain from giving assent to the consequence of both implications, that is, he showers quickly and he drinks badly, he will not assent to a non-comprehensive fantasia after agreeing to the comprehensive one. In other words, after we have assented to the comprehensive fantasia of seeing a man drinking a lot, which is formulated whenever we see someone taking many drinks, we would not then make the mistake of assenting to the non-comprehensive fantasia that this was an instance of bad drinking, or the contrary. Let us now turn our attention to Enchiridion chapter 44, which is the next, I think, the next slide. Epictetus says, these arguments are inconsistent. I'm richer than you, therefore I'm superior to you. I'm more eloquent than you, therefore I'm superior to you. But rather, these are consistent. I am richer than you, therefore my possessions are greater than yours. Or I'm more eloquent than you, therefore my eloquence is greater than yours. For you are neither possessions nor eloquence. Here again, Epictetus does not show the conditionals in an explicit form, but they are present in the argument in a contract form. Formalizing these arguments, we should obtain the next slide. If I'm richer than you, then I am superior to you. I'm richer than you, therefore I'm superior to you. Again, this is an argument in the form of opponent opponents. And again, the argument is valid according to this mood. But it is not valid according to the Chrysippean criterion of a conditional, because the contradictory of I am superior to you, which is, it's not the case that I am superior to you, does not necessarily conflict with I'm richer than you, since superior can be understood in many possible ways, and Epictetus is understood here in a moral meaning. That's why Epictetus corrects with another argument in a contracted form that we can formalize in the following way. I think it's the next slide. I'm richer than you, then my possessions are greater than yours. I'm richer than you, their possessions are greater than yours. I think I repeat, but you got it. This argument is also in the form opponent opponents, and it is valid. In addition, it follows the Chrysippean criterion of a conditional, because the contradictory of my possessions are greater than yours, which is, it's not the case that my possessions are greater than yours, conflicts with I'm richer than you. We can apply the same reasoning to the second argument Epictetus presents in the above passage. I'm more eloquent than you, therefore my eloquence is greater than yours. It's the contracted form of the following argument. If I'm more eloquent than you, then I'm superior to you. I'm more eloquent than you, therefore I'm superior to you. Again, for a moral perspective, it's not the case that I am superior to you does not conflict with I'm more eloquent than you. But the contradiction of my eloquence is greater than yours, which is, this is not the case that my eloquence is greater than yours, conflicts with I'm more eloquent than you. And then we have the following valid argument. I think it's next. In the next. Oh no, I didn't put a slide. If I'm more eloquent than you, then my eloquence is greater than yours. I'm more eloquent than you, therefore my eloquence is greater than yours. So there is a link, a substantive link between the antecedent and the consequent. Now that we have a clearer understanding of how implication works for Epictetus, we turn to the implication theorem, as we call it. The examination of names is between the preconceptions of good and bad and human actions and opinions. In Enchiridion 45, particular human actions can be called good or bad, but we cannot judge someone's action before knowing the opinion behind the action. In the case where we do not know this opinion, we must suspend our judgment. Because we suspend judgment in this instance, we can deduce that in this context, good and bad are names that must be given primarily to opinions, being each opinion, as we saw above, an aspect of fantasia, a modification of the hegemonicon. A human action, by contrast, can only be called good or bad in a secondary manner. that is, in reference to the intention or opinion by which the action is performed. Although Epictetus does not formulate it explicitly, the following rule arises from the logical analysis we have just examined. Do not judge, now is the next slide finally. Do not judge a human action before knowing the reason behind it. In other words, do not apply the terms good or bad to an action without knowing the opinion by which it is made. And Epictetus used an application of Stoic logic to prove his point. Note also that this application is in harmony with Epictetus' distinction between things up to us and not up to us, because, according to this distinction, moral things, the only things that we could properly call good or bad, are internal, that is, impulse, assent, judgment, and desire, or in general, the use of presentation, while all the others are external and indifferent, that is, materials for action that can be used in a good or bad way, as a ball in a ball game. In Enchiridion chapter 44, on the other hand, Epictetus highlights that no moral qualities, as wealth and persuasiveness, do not turn anyone superior to others from a moral perspective. Again, although Epictetus does not formulate it explicitly, the following rule arises from the logical analysis we have just examined. Do not judge a human before knowing the opinions that he or she has assented to. In other words, do not apply the terms good or bad to humans without knowing their opinions, suppositions, desires, how to deal with their impulses, or in general, the way they use their presentations. Again, Epictetus uses an application of Stoic logic in harmony with his distinction between things up to us and things not up to us. From all this we have seen, we can safely say that by means of this implication theorem, the students of philosophy can practice two of the logical virtues Diogenes Laertius mentions, namely freedom from precipitancy in assent, aprotosia, which is achieved by avoiding hasty judgments, and strength against the first impression, anekaiotes. According to Diogenes Laertius, for the Stoics, it's in the next, I think it's the next slide. Dialectic is indispensable, and it is in itself a virtue, embracing other particular virtues under it. Freedom from precipitancy, aprotosia, is a knowledge of when to give or withhold the soul's assent to impressions. By wariness, anekaiotes, they mean a strong presumption against what at the moment seems probable, so as to not be taken in by it. Irrefutability, analexia, is a strength in arguments so as not to be brought over by it to the opposite side. Earnestness, or absence of frivolity, amataiotes, is a habit of referring presentation to right reason. Knowledge itself, they define either as an apprehension or as a habit or state, which in reception of presentations cannot be shaken by arguments. Well, note that the notion of conflict in the Stoic logic unfolds into three basic ways: conceptual, analytical, and empirical. And here we can ask, is it possible for Epictetus to go further and come to a conclusion about the character of an agent, even though we don't know the reason why he or she does a particular action? The answer, as we shall see, is affirmative. Thus, for example, in Discourses 4:5-17, Epictetus observes that we can evaluate someone's opinions by examining his or her character. If it is kind, sociable, patient, and loving, their opinions are good. If the opposite is true, they are bad. I think it's in the next slide. Epictetus says, and someone can pass me the bottle of water. Yeah, this one. Yeah. Or this one, huh? I think, yeah, thanks. What impression has this piece of money? Traians. Give it me. Neros. Threw it away. It's false. It's good for nothing. So, in the other case, what stamp have his principles? Gentleness, social affection, patience, good nature. bring them hither. I receive them. I make such a man a citizen. I receive him as a neighbor, as a fellow traveler. Only see that we have not the Neronian stamp. Is he passionate? Is he resentful? Is he careless? Would he, if he took the fancy, break the heads of those who fell in his way? Why then do you call him a human? For is everything determined by a mere outward form? And so on. So, let me take some water. Just a moment. So, if someone is constantly harsh, hostile, and impatient, we can deduce that he or she has the wrong opinions about what a good human being must be. Such bad behavior, he views here his or her bad opinions and principles. In this case, the contradiction of the consequence empirically opposes the antecedent in this way. If someone is constantly harsh, hostile, and impatient, then he has bad opinions about what a good human being is. On the other hand, if someone is constantly gentle, social, patient, and good-natured, then he has good opinions about what a good human being is. In summary, we have the following premises in the implication theorem about judging human actions. I think it's next. Yeah, next slide. First, if the contradictory of the consequence is not in conflict with the antecedent, then the conditional is false, which is the Chrysippean criterion. Two, if we see a human action, we cannot say from the mere observation of it, devoid of the knowledge of the reason for the action, that this is a good or a bad action. Three, if we see the external attributes of someone, we cannot say from the mere observation of it that this person is morally good or bad or superior or inferior. Four, the logical reason for 2 and 3 is that if we construct an implication in which an observed action or attribute is the antecedent following the criterion of Chrysippus, this implication will be false if the consequent is either then he acts well or then he acts badly, or then he acts good or then he's bad, or then he's superior. On the other hand, with the last point, from the continual observation of bad behavior, we can deduce that the agent has bad opinions and principles because it empirically opposes a good set of tenets and precepts. Conclusion, a human action can be called good or bad only insofar as one refers to good or bad opinions that underpins this action. Similarly, a human can be called good or bad or superior only insofar as one refers these adjectives to his or her opinions, desires, impulses, assents, or in general to his or her use of presentation. Finally, we must note that the correct use of presentations, which includes assenting to good opinions, having good desires and impulses, and using correctly the capacity of assent, is in itself an application of the distinction between up to us and not up to us. It should not surprise us, since the distinction is formulated in the form of an exhaustive, exclusive disjunction. The Stoics avoid the false dilemma, the Sophistical false dilemma, through the formulation of a criterion for this kind of a conditional. For instance, the false dilemma from the antiquity saying, or you marry a beautiful partner, or she or he will betray you, or you marry an ugly partner, and she and you will be unhappy, can be avoided by adding another disjunct to complete the exhaustive exclusive disjunction. In this way, or you marry a beautiful partner, and he or she will betray you, or you marry an ugly partner, you'll be unhappy, or you marry a partner neither beautiful nor ugly, and everything will be okay. Similarly, the Stoic distinction of good says, I think it's the last slide. Things are either good or bad, or neither good nor bad. Epictetus or Musonius, because Epictetus in fact says that Musonius formulated in the first place, reformulates it in the following manner. Things are up to us or not up to us, which is fundamentally the same Stoic principle. Things are up to us, that is good or bad, or not up to us, that is neither good nor bad. Putting in a conditional form, we should obtain. If things are up to us, they are either good or bad. And if things are not up to us, they are neither good nor bad. From a Stoic point of view, there is a substantive connection between these consequences and antecedents, which grounds the moral use of conditionals in Epictetus in above. That is. Thank you.
Great. Aldo, thank you very much. I'll open the floor for questions. Yeah, Sophia, please. I think here. Yeah.
Well, Aldo, thank you very much. I'm really interested in psychology, so I have questions. Okay, it's only, I think, curiosity because I never delved into Epictetus logic. So I was thinking about, first of all, that according to Chrysippus, every case is either true or false. So I want to ask you if also Epictetus or there are, I don't know, any possibility of something into the middle. And this is the first question. And the question is connecting the epoch, because you talked about the suspension of judgment. And I was thinking about the paradox of the Sorites. Because in this case, in Sectus Empiricus, we can read that according to Chrysippus, we can suspend the judgment if we have, I don't know, in front of us two eggs, two snakes, or two twins, if you don't know which is one. No? So this is the famous paradox of the Sorite. And for example, in the case of the Sorite, in Diogenes Laertius, Chrysippus doesn't express the Sorite with if P, then Q. But he uses a negation. He doesn't use the conditional. No P and no Q. So I would like to ask you if Epictetus talks about the Sorite and if he talks about the Sorite in how. I don't know if Epictetus.
Well, I think that Jesus follows the standard Stoic logic. And I think that Epictetus is following the standard Stoic logic. So it keeps this decision between true and false. There's no intermediate between them. And this question about the Sorites is exactly what I'm planning to study, all the study that the Sophists, the Stoics did about the Sophism and everything. So I don't have the range right now that I swear to question. But Epictetus, he talks about the argumento dominador. What's the argumento dominador? What? Yeah, about the necessity and destiny.
Okay.
And all the Sophism. It's interesting. He doesn't think that is a kind of valid argument. And why is it so important to study all these questions about Sophism and everything? Because the third part of the Epictetus philosophy, which is about securing all the progress you have obtained for the two first talks, is exactly a topic about logic. Because securing the progress you have made includes not being misled by false arguments by Sophism. And for it, you must necessarily speak logic. And this is what we call now informal logic. Right?
Yeah, of
For
course.
Sophism.
Okay.
But I have a pile of papers to read about it.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
But thanks for the question.
Good. Other questions? Okay, I have a question, Aldo. But let me just, oh, did you have one? Oh, okay. Let me just, I know, I've gotta find where I put my notes. Where did I put this? Sorry, although you have to bear with me. I need to come back to your slide. I was just wondering if you could say a little bit more about your summary points. Those, I don't know if you want to pull the slide up for people to look at, but your summary. You talked about the following premises in the implication theorem about judging human actions. I just want to ask you about number 3.
Okay.
Yeah. So number 3, if we see the external attributes of someone, we cannot say from the mere observation of it that this person is morally good or bad or superior. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yes. For Epictetus and for Chrysippus, sound conditional must exhibit substantial connection between the decision and the consequence. And what Epictetus is saying is that if you see some external quality of someone, it has no necessary link to any oral concept of this person. See, it's totally external. It means nothing like itself. You must find a link between this external quality or the action and the intention or the opinion behind it. Otherwise, you cannot establish a real connection between the decision and the consequence. And would produce a false condition and invalid conclusion. And what it is done is because it thinks that when he draw invalid conclusions about someone, consequently, when we reason badly, we suffer. We destroy the capacity of establishing a real connection with reality. But you focus by that. That's why he said you see the true representation, which is someone it's true. And then you add something is false. Because you don't know why he does it. Concluding that he drinks that.
Okay. All right. So then I have a follow-up question. Does this hold for the sage? Then what do we do with the doxographical report that Zeno describes a youth that is beautiful and worthy of love? And by worthy of love, in the Stoic context, right, that means that the sage can see in that youth, right? But just merely by looking at them, by their physical features, can see they're capable of virtue.
It's totally another. It's a different.
But it's the same point. I mean, it is a different subject, but I'm just wondering, so if that's the case, then how do we square this position in Stoic logic with this political, if we think this is political? I think it's a political claim, right? Because it's about how we organize society. Right.
No, first of all, this notion of conditions is from Christ. Christ was not Zeno.
Well, right, but I mean, okay, but that's I don't think that eliminates. Hold on, just a second. I don't think that eliminates our problem.
Oh, sure.
Because of Christ. No, but Chrysippus, I mean, a major feature of Chrysippus' work is to explicate and clarify Zeno. So and we know that he clarified this position about the worthiness of love of this young blooming person. So we know that there's clarification for that. So I would be hesitant to say that, oh, it's Chrysippus, which is different from Zeno, because there is a relation. So I would only say, like, don't dismiss it too quickly.
Okay.
So give me a second.
Yeah. In fact, Sextus Empiricus, he reports different theory of conditions by Chrysippus, which is not condition, but still pseudo condition, in which there is relation. Although there is no relation between the seed and the consequence, you can even so trace a conclusion. I will explain. It happens in the case of order. Or like there is no necessary connection between the seed and the consequence, as Cicero in the Epictetus, if Cicero was under the dog's eye, then he died in the sea. There is no connection. But anyway, you can establish how it is. There is a paper, Isabella, about it. And he says that, and I agree, but something that I must more, I want to investigate it, is that this conclusion is raised by experience. So all the oracles, all the are established. When you interpret a sign, you interpret by experience, not by theory. And for the first, signs are everywhere. And we read the word, or the stomach, the ear, the words, so on. So it's a matter of experience. But in this case, you said a particular case. In this case, we see the build of a young. You were talking about pederasty law. The theory is that if you see someone beautiful, this beauty is a sign virtue. We did a paper, me and Vilmar, about it. For them, sign of virtue. So if it's beautiful, it's a sign of virtue. And when you love this person, you make this virtue develop. It's theory. It's a dangerous theory, of course. But what I read in Sofia and some others, and so this idea of love underpins a lot in antiquity. In this case, Dino is not following Stoicism at all. He's following Platonic doctrine. That's the conclusion he came at. The first philosopher in the West to assert that there is possible the possibility of an unequal relation between men and women is exactly Posidonius in the 1st century, and he's giving a new interpretation of undead love. And if we go back to the 5th century, we see that Xenophon, which is exactly the pederasty definition of undead love that introduced, not by himself, but one of his persona in the symposium. So, but anyway, it's a matter of interpretation. So the sage in this case would be a very experienced and with the capacity of reading by experience this sign of virtue in the young.
Okay, thanks. Other questions? Oh, Vilmar.
Falar desse deslocamento que tem, que para os gregos a relação afetiva, de pederastia do mestre com o discípulo era muito comum. E aí ele vai apontar que no deslocamento greco-romano, da filosofia helenística com os estoicos, isso começa a deixar de ser uma prática e começa a ser uma prática não tão bem vista. Exatamente. O próprio Seneca vai pontuar isso em uma das cartas que ele coloca para serenos, né?
Sim, sim.
E aí depois isso vai se tornando pior com a ascensão do cristianismo, que aí passa a ser uma prática totalmente proibida, né? E aí você traz o Mussônio com essa relação já mulher-homem, a relação antérica de amizade que também Não era comum dentro da filosofia.
Não era comum.
Foi isso?
Exato. In ancient times, as humans were seen as inferior, with the possibility of an equal relation between human and man was almost impossible. They could not see it. That's why the Petrarch log was so in vogue in Athens, for instance, and also in Sparta and abroad.
Okay, great. I think that.
So just
Oh, yeah,
one point. And in this case, we have already the market. The conflict is established analytically, not conceptually, but empirically.
Sure, I think that's great. Yeah. Okay, super. Other questions? No. Then Aldo, thank you very much. All right, I'm gonna it's been left to me to say thank you very much to the folks online for being here, and to those of you in the room. It's great to have you. And we will reconvene again tomorrow at 2 p.m. local time, and see you then. Thanks. Bye.